Hey guys, you are watching your Monster Izuku fanfiction. How are you all? So in this video, we will see what if Deku became the armored warrior and angel of God. Here is short summary. Midoriya Izuku faces a divine encounter after a fall, receiving angelic powers and a celestial mission of My Hero Academia. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. A story for another time. The armor wearer dismissed swiftly. And do not fret, it is not your earth. My earth. Izuku repeated with a confused expression. Another explanation best saved for a different time. Gabriel responded with another dismissive wave. Okay, Izuku blinked, the many thoughts that raced through his brain all screamed for him to ponder as to what Gabriel was talking about. However, the 14-year-old was able to quell those thoughts for a later time. I know you already answered this, but who are you? And how exactly are we breathing on the moon right now? We are divine, Izuku. Our kind do not require the necessities like that of mortals. Gabriel explained as though it was the most obvious answer. Wait, what do you mean by our kind, and that we're divine? Izuku followed up his previous questions. The armored man's answer only served to increase his confusion rather than alleviate it. Have you not noticed? Perhaps the change in scenery has dulled your senses more than I anticipated. Gabriel hummed with a note of surprise. You back, Izuku, look at it. With one last confused glance, the quirkless teen did as instructed, turning his head to glance behind himself. In that very moment, Izuku's breath caught in his throat as he noticed the very obvious blue wings that came from his upper back. That wasn't nearly as bizarre as the fact that the wings themselves were made out of some kind of light, not feather like Izuku would assume. The 14-year-old also managed to get a glimpse of a spiky halo that hung above his head. From what Izuku could see, it appeared to be made out of the same blue light material as his wings. I have wings. But I don't even feel any weight from them. Being the analytical teen he was, Izuku's mind began to race with many questions regarding his new appendages. They look real, but I can't tell what they're made out of. It's almost like they're made of light. Would they even work? Izuku gave a slight flex in his back, his green eyes lighting up when the wings stretched as well. Incredible, so they really do work. I wonder if they're tangible. If not, then things like wind speed wouldn't be a factor during flight, if I can even fly with them, that is. Not too sure on that just yet. Quite magnificent, aren't they? Gabriel rhetorically asked with a small chuckle. Just one of the many gifts bestowed upon us from the Father's light. They're amazing, Izuku muttered in complete awe. However, the realization of what having the wings and halo meant soon hit the greenette like a freight train. I actually did it. I'm really dead, Izuku mumbled with a newfound somber aura. Not dead, chosen, Gabriel clarified with a firm tone. Chosen? For what and by who? The middle schooler asked immediately, fixing the armored man with a confused look. You have been chosen by the Father himself, Izuku. His light flows through you as it does me and many others like us. In a bright flash, Gabriel's own, much larger, blue wings emerged from his back. You are divine now, an angel of God. The armored wearer said before his wings disappeared in another flash of light. What? Izuku stuttered, completely taken aback by the serious tone Gabriel used. An angel, him. The statement in any other scenario would be seen as a cruel and unfunny joke, probably told to Izuku by his classmates. Every single fiber of his being told him that he could never amount to such importance. He was quirkless, powerless, he was in all ways except legally lesser than everyone else. Yet, Izuku was completely stumped as Gabriel's demeanor suggested the complete opposite. Izuku couldn't possibly be that important, right? BBBU, but I'm quirkless. His head bowed in shame, uttering the words that sealed his fate since he was 4. I admit the term is unfamiliar to me. Please explain. The armored angel paused for a moment before continuing. I am nothing, I don't have a quirk. I'm useless, nothing more than a stupid useless Deku. By the end, Izuku's voice was no louder than a faint whisper. Everyone else has all these amazing quirks that lets them do extraordinary things, but I don't. I can't be like them. I can't be a hero without a quirk. You've provided the social value of this quirk, yet I still do not know what it is. Gabriel noted with a monotone voice. I guess they're like superpowers in a way. They can be anything from being super strong to turning you into an animal hybrid or shooting lasers out of your eyes. The fondness in Izuku's voice did not go unnoticed, yet Gabriel chose to remain silent. Then there are people like me, those without a power to call their own. Just regular, useless people like me. Intriguing. Well, from how your world seems to hold these quirks in such high regard, it appears your Earth is governed by fools. Gabriel said with finality after taking a moment to ponder on his fellow angel's explanation. It is not power that makes a righteous man, but what he does with it. But what about people like me, those who don't even have power to begin with? Izuku muttered quietly, a defeated look in his eyes. How are we supposed to become heroes if we don't have anything special about us? The Father's Son was but a simple carpenter before his crucifixion. His crime? Merely spreading the word of God. The angel rebutted sternly. Those that are seen as powerless are often the ones who perform the most heroic acts. I don't understand, why me? I haven't done anything extraordinary, so why was I chosen? The middle schooler asked once more. The Father works in mysterious ways, even to someone like myself. Gabriel answered with honesty. Regardless of his reasoning, you have been chosen. Which means there is something inside of you that the Father sees as worthy of his light, Izuku. Quirkless or not, you are now a warrior of God. I am not worthy of such an honor. Despite the soothing warmth that blossomed in his chest, Izuku remained firm in his uselessness. There are probably more suitable people than someone like me. I don't deserve. Enough. Gabriel cut the Greenette's tirade off with a decisive, steel tone. No matter what anyone says, even if they have the most powerful quirk in existence, you are worthy. God has personally chosen you, by that alone proves how you are more than worthy. I suppose. Izuku relented, though he was not convinced. Your confidence requires work. We shall work on it along with the rest of your training. The angel sighed, heavily resisting the urge to drag his hand across his helm. Training. Izuku latched onto the word instantaneously, both out of desperation to change the subject but also out of genuine curiosity. Yes, it is my duty to teach you the ways of the Father and how to use his light for righteousness. For the enemies of heaven are many. Gabriel explained in his serious voice. His armor clinked as he stood from his makeshift bench. It is our duty to preserve the balance the Father intended. We are his holy sword and shield that will vanquish the wicked and protect the innocent. Ah, right. Izuku nodded slowly. Truthfully, he only partially understood what the angel was saying. I sense your confusion. Unfortunately, our time together is coming to an end. Do not fret, for we shall meet again very soon, Izuku. Gabriel said, his wings appearing behind him once more. May your woes be few and your days many. With that, the armored angel levitated into the air, golden energy beginning to surround not just himself but Izuku too. A strange, but oddly pleasant warmth began to rapidly spread across Izuku's body. As the feeling intensified, his vision became narrower, as if he was slowly closing his eyes. There was a brief flash of golden light before the view of the campsite was replaced by the familiar clear blue sky. As quickly as it came, the warm feeling dissipated, leaving a dumbfounded Izuku atop the building where he had his talk with All Might. The Greenette was somewhat surprised, considering that he remembered letting go of the railing when he jumped. Then again, he did have his eyes closed as he began his fall. I'm back, Izuku thought to himself, glancing behind to see the same blue wings still sprouting from his back. So, it really wasn't a dream. I am an angel now. Reciting such information almost made Izuku burst out in laughter at the sheer absurdity of the statement. However, his intrigue for the ethereal wings and halo quelled any negative thoughts he may have had at the moment. For a few moments Izuku simply stood there, admiring his new appendages before a large, energetic smile etched across his face. Maybe I can finally become a hero now. He could feel the droplets of relieved tears beginning to roll down his face. I can be a hero, I can be a hero too. Izuku let out a boisterous laugh, his wings stretched high as he stared up into the sky. Thank you. The middle schooler let out a soft whisper before going over to the railing once more. A newfound liveliness burned within Izuku like an inextinguishable fire as he observed the sight of the city before him. His wings remained stretched wide, ready to be used for the leap of faith Izuku would take. This moment is just what Izuku needed, a chance to finally soar the skies with unrestricted freedom, both figuratively and literally. He was going to do it, he was going to jump and fly with his wings. He was finally going to be free of the shackles of doubt that bound him for so long. On second thought, I'm actually really high up, maybe I should start small first. Izuku let out a nervous chuckle as he took in just how high he really was. Stairs it is. Outside of Midoriya residence, sundown. From the time it took to journey from the building to his house, Izuku had learned quite a lot about his new appendages. He had made a haphazardly page for himself in the charred notebook he had. Apparently his wings and halo were in fact not tangible as he walked through the rooftop stairs without being caught on the doorway. He also found out, unlike other muscles, it took very little effort to actually move or flap his wings. Izuku had already written down several hypotheses in his notebook that he intended to test at a later date. If the success of his first one was any indication, then the answers to his other questions may yield similar results. On his walk home, Izuku may have slightly, very greatly, freaked out at the idea of showing up to his house and mom with wings unannounced. He tried many attempts at getting the ethereal pieces to reside back into his body. Izuku saw Gabriel do it, so surely he could accomplish the same thing. At first he tried to will them away. When that didn't work, Izuku then tried curling them to the point where they might disappear. Neither attempt proved successful, causing Izuku to give up and simply accept that they were there. Imagine his surprise when during his walk he briefly glanced behind himself to see his wings had disappeared. His confusion only increased when he blinked only to see they were back as though they were never gone in the first place. It was at that point the middle schooler decided to give up on the matter for now. Though he made a mental note to ask Gabriel how their wings worked the next time he saw him. Okay, just stay calm and relax. Izuku told himself as he stood just outside his apartment door. Play it cool and try not to freak out mom more than she probably will be. With one final deep breath, Izuku grabbed the handle of the door and twisted, opening and closing it calmly. Mom, I'm home, Izuku called out, taking his shoes off by the front door. Oh, there you were, Izuku honey, I was getting worried. Inko practically materialized from around the corner. There was a worrying glint in her eyes before it was replaced by relief. Sorry mom, I saw a villain attack on my way back and wanted to take notes. Izuku hated lying, but he felt it was better than the alternative. Saying he tried to commit suicide and met an angel where he learned he became one himself. Yeah, that probably wouldn't go over too well. Oh well, okay honey. Did you see any new heroes today? The matriarch Midoriya tentatively asked. Yeah, but I actually wanted to talk to you about something. Izuku awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, looking anywhere but at his mother. It's about me and you know, how I want to become a hero. Ah, well, what would you like to talk about, Izuku? Inko fidgeted nervously. She had a feeling a talk like this would happen sooner or later. She always assumed that it would be her that would initiate it though. You may want to sit down for this. The green-haired boy led his mother over to their couch. She sat down, with an uneasy but curious expression, while Izuku remained standing in front of her. Before I say anything, I need you to promise not to freak out, okay? Okay Izu, I promise. Inko agreed, though her confusion was plain as day. Okay, here I go. Izuku took a shaky breath before fully relaxing his body. He didn't need to turn around to see his wings and halo had appeared. Inko's confused look immediately shifted to one of complete shock and awe as her mouth hung open. Her green eyes were wide as she took in the sight of her precious boy with two mystical wings of blue light. Her baby boy, her Izuku, had never looked more angelic. It quite literally brought Inko to tears. Izuku you, Inko gasped, the flood of tears ready to burst a moment's notice. Yeah, I have a quirk. Her son gave a shaky smile. Pretty neat, huh? You have a quirk, my Izuku has a quirk, my son has a quirk. And just like that the dam burst, allowing the stream of tears to flow down the green-haired woman's chubby cheeks. The reaction was to be expected, though that didn't stop Izuku from almost crying himself. He managed to hold it in, barely. Instead, he grabbed the box of tissues that sat on the coffee table and politely offered it to his weeping mother. She took the box with a small thanks, using many tissues to dab at her damp face. For a few moments only the sound of Inko's sobbing echoed through the room, slowly but surely subsiding. Izuku sat beside the weeping woman, gently rubbing her back in an attempt to calm her down. Izuku let out a surprised gasp when he suddenly found himself wrapped in a tight, but still breathable hug. He could feel the difference from the usual embrace his mom gives him. So used was he to feeling the poorly concealed sadness and hopelessness that radiated from his mother ever since he found out he was quirkless. Now though, Izuku could detect the palpable happiness with ease. In what felt like a long time the green-haired boy truly felt as though his mom was really supporting him. There was no underlying sense of doubt, no false sense of belief or reluctant encouragement. His mother really believed in him without a shadow of a doubt. That was all it took for Izuku's fragile wall to break down, a small hiccup escaping his throat as he desperately tried to hold back his emotion. It was all in vain as within mere moments his visage matched that of his mother's. Large, almost comically large, tears poured from Izuku's eye sockets. He immediately returned the embrace with an equal amount of passion, his grip tightening as he let out quiet sobs. Though the cries he let out were for once out of joy rather than despair. The warm feeling of hope that blossomed in Izuku's chest was a welcome change to the hole that tormented him for the majority of his life. This feels nice, Izuku thought to himself as he continued to hold his mother. A small, hopeful smile appeared on his pale face despite the tears still leaking from his eyes. Things might really start to get better now. Heaven, the council auditorium. Like so many times before, Gabriel entered into the grand hall with a ray of majestic golden beam of light. He appeared in the center of the auditorium, immediately getting on one knee and bowing his head with respect to the council. The stands that surrounded him were filled with 17 councilmen of heaven. Their saintly blue and gold robes and hoods contrasted with the sleek shine of Gabriel's divine armor. The difference between them and Gabriel could not be more apparent than that of heaven and hell itself. Gabriel was a warrior of the Father, smiting enemies in his name. The angels that surrounded him were no more than scholars who have not witnessed even a drop of bloodshed. You may rise, Archangel Gabriel. The lead councilman spoke with booming authority. Council. With permission given, Gabriel rose to his feet, standing tall as he dressed the other angels in the room. I have made contact with the anomaly discovered on the Earth's moon. Your report then, Archangel. The leader commanded bluntly. Upon my arrival to the ruined temple, I was not faced with a demonic nor a machine entity, but a boy. Gabriel explained briskly, not one for the grandeur of storytelling. Boy, as in human. Another member interrupted. Yes, a human boy. However, Gabriel attempted to continue before the many voices of the councilmen intruded. The archangel resisted a sigh. He should have seen this coming in hindsight. That is absurd. Humanity is dead. We do not know for certain. The machines still linger in the overworld. Survivors may still be present. Or they could be concocting a plan to invade the layers. Regardless, why is a child on the moon rather than on Earth? How would the boy even survive to begin with? Perhaps it is a machine in disguise. Preposterous, the machines are not that advanced. So humanity thought as well, and look where they are now. Enough. The room became quiet once more as the lead angel's authoritative order reverberated throughout the room. Continue with your report, Archangel. Yes, Councilman. Gabriel nodded with a short bow, out of both respect and thanks. I had an intuition that the boy was not as human as he appeared to be. I performed an examination of his life energy and soul, finding it to be not of this reality. A dimensional traveler. We have not encountered one for a few generations now. The leader noted with intrigue in his voice. Indeed, I was taken aback by this new knowledge as well, leading me to further my examination. Gabriel paused briefly, mentally preparing himself for the storm that was about to be unleashed. After completing my inspection, I found the Father's light within him. As expected, the room almost instantly exploded into a chaotic jumble of noise. Impossible. A human with the Father's light. Not just a human, but a traveler of dimensions too. This is inconceivable. Perhaps your judgment is incorrect, Gabriel. Fool, he would not state it if not for its truthfulness. A human chosen by the Father. Maybe it is an energy similar to that of the Father's light. Heresy, the Father's light is absolute. Nothing can replicate its power. Then how is it a boy has it? An explanation exists, we merely just have to find it. Silence. The auditorium shook ever so slightly from the thunderous boom that was the lead councilman. As quickly as the uproar began, it dissipated, leaving an uncomfortable silence to fall over the great hall. Gabriel remained silent until the gazes of the council were turned back towards him, yearning for their answers. Are you certain the Father's light flows through the boy? The leader questioned inquisitively. Yes, I performed multiple scans to find even the barest evidence against it. There was nothing, the light was present within him. Gabriel answered robotically. So the Holy Father has picked another champion. A contemplative hum escaped through the angel's mouth as he pondered on the information. It has been a very long time since this has occurred. But the Father has only chosen mortals from this realm in the past. A member suddenly spoke up. His benevolence is not constrained to this plane of existence alone. It is not outlandish to believe that the boy was chosen despite him being of a different realm. The head councilman rebuked before turning his attention to the armored warrior. Your theory, Archangel. My thoughts exactly, Councilman. Gabriel agreed with his superior with a nod. The light is just as powerful as mine and yours. God must have chosen the boy to yield his power. Have you any theory as to why, Gabriel? Another angel suddenly put forth. Unfortunately, I do not. You know as well as I do that the Father works in mysterious ways. The reason shall come, sooner or later. Gabriel answered honestly. The explanation appeared to satiate the more skeptical part of the council. Tell us, what do you make of the boy? There was a chorus of agreement to the question. His eyes, they were full of sadness and despair. His voice low and submissive, and his gaze almost never met mine. He has clearly been beaten down throughout his life, his confidence and belief in himself is almost non-existent. Gabriel began his rundown of Izuku's character. He told me himself that he was unworthy of the Father's light. Such characteristics are tragic, but unbecoming of an angel of God. One of the harsher members of the council interjected. He has a pure soul. Gabriel shot back forcefully. The comment slightly angered the archangel for a reason he could not discern. Regardless of his shortcomings, I could see the goddess buried beneath a lifetime of pain and torment. His intent to help others despite his thorny past is truly the mark of an angel. I can feel the unbreakable resolve within him, he merely requires the right guidance, the armored man finished with a firm tone, almost daring someone to challenge him. If what you say is true, Archangel, then what do you propose we do with the boy? The head of the council asked after a brief moment of silence. Allow me to personally train him, the academy would prove to be more detrimental than helpful. Gabriel requested with a respectful but hardened voice. You have never taken on an apprentice before, Archangel. An angel brought up with confusion. There were several other murmurs of agreement on the point. Why the sudden interest in this boy? His refinement into a soldier of God requires careful precision and tact. Throwing him suddenly into the world of heaven and its workings will overwhelm him. Gabriel answered the question swiftly. I, on the other hand, have already made a connection with him, and my experience as a warrior speaks for itself. It is only natural that I am the most qualified for the position. But you are not a teacher. Nor have you shown any interest in the field. Another argument was thrown Gabriel's way. I have slain countless enemies of heaven and crushed numerous resistances that appeared in hell. Minos, Sisyphus and many more. I think something as simple as teaching will be no issue for me. The armored angel kept his tone respectfully, but even he could not stop the pride from infecting his words. Very well, I bring forth a vote. All in favor of Archangel Gabriel to take on the boy as his apprentice say aye. The auditorium was filled with the sound of many angels expressing their agreement. The majority answer aye. Gabriel, your request has been accepted. You are to train the boy and turn him into a respectable warrior of God. Your business here is concluded, leave Archangel. Council. Gabriel gave one last nod to the other angels before disappearing with a beam of golden light. Now outside of the auditorium, the armored warrior remained motionless as he pondered what his next action would be. A part of him wanted to return to the overworld or one of hell's layers to slay more demons and machines. However, the more rational part of his mind told him that he needed to prepare for Izuku's first lesson. Despite his confidence in his abilities to teach, Gabriel really did have no experience in the field. With some reluctance, Gabriel made the decision to return to the moon to prepare for Izuku's next visit. HMPH, how hard could it really be? Gabriel gave a small chuckle as his wings appeared, allowing him to soar the skies of heaven. What is but a few lessons compared to the many battles I've partaken in? Izuku woke up from his sleep feeling great, which was somewhat of a shock considering how he usually felt. Normally he was sluggish with slight bags under his eyes, trucking through his morning routine with slow movements. However, today the middle schooler felt oddly refreshed. The sensation was similar to when he was struck by that golden flash. Getting out of bed, Izuku let out a joyful hum as he made his way over to his closet. With noticeably more energy in his actions, Izuku opened the closet door and pulled out his school uniform. He quickly threw on the clothes before grabbing his backpack and making his way out into the kitchen where his mom was already working over the stove. Izuku took a seat at the table, unzipping his bag to do a quick check that he had all his supplies for the door. When all was accounted for, the middle schooler rezipped the backpack, just in time for his mom to notice that he was there. "Oh Izuku, you're up early," Inko said with a bit of surprise. After the initial shock wore off, her brow creased with worry. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah, really good actually," Izuku replied with complete honesty. "That's good sweetie," the green-haired woman answered back with a smile. "Breakfast should be ready soon." "Actually, I'm not really hungry," Izuku plainly stated, getting up from his seat and throwing the straps of his backpack over his shoulders. "Oh, are you okay, Izu?" The worried tone reappeared within the matriarch's words once more. Like I said, I'm feeling great today." The middle schooler nodded resolutely with a bright smile. "I'm okay, if you're sure honey." Inko relented, unable to resist the persuasion of her son's glowing grin. It was a sight she sorely missed, seeing her son smiling with clear happiness in his eyes. "Bye mom, have a good day." Izuku walked over and gave the woman a quick side hug before making his way out the front door. "Love you," he shouted back as he stepped into the cool April air. "Love you too, Izu. Have a good day," the woman called back before her son shut the door behind himself. The trek to Aldera was rather uneventful compared to the usual stream of bad luck Izuku was often plagued with. He managed to make it to the front gates of the school without incident, a cheery hum replacing his usual quiet self. However, the tune along with Izuku's overall joyful aura disappeared upon stepping through the entrance. Almost immediately he was faced with the familiar hushed whispers and laughs as he passed by. Izuku responded to the insults as he always did, bowing his head low and hunching his shoulders so that he appeared as small as possible. Despite the new quirk he discovered he had yesterday, which remained concealed at the moment, Izuku could not stop the effect the whispers had. His cheery disposition reverted to a more submissive, downtrodden aura. The reaction was ingrained into the greenette at this point, a natural reaction from decades worth of bullying. Even if Izuku knew deep down that those words didn't mean anything anymore, they still cut deep as they always did. "Hey look, it's Deku. You know sometimes I forget he still goes here. I'm kinda impressed that he made it this far. Yeah, for a quirkless he's really persistent. I heard he applied for UA. Ha, as if they'd even consider it. I mean come on. Hey yeah, especially after what happened yesterday. I heard Bakugo took on a real villain. Like nearly managed to take them down himself. Now with a quirk like his I can see Yue accepting him on the spot. The murmurs eventually faded into a dull white noise, despite Izuku wanting to learn more about the villain attack. From the snippets he picked up on, Bakugo fought the slime villain before needing to be rescued by All Might. At first the Greenette thought of approaching the explosive blonde, but upon stepping into his homeroom he thought better against it. Sitting at his usual desk was Katsuki, his usual scowl mixed with clear annoyance. Surrounding him was a cluster of other students, all bombarding him with various questions. Seeing as how the blonde was but a moment away from exploding, literally and figuratively, Izuku decided to quietly take his own seat. The attention on Bakugo allowed for the quirkless boy to avoid the usual bout of jeers he got. It also helped that once class had begun, Izuku's homeroom teacher spent a good 5 minutes praising Bakugo for being a real hero. Weirdly enough, Bakugo seemed to scoff at the praise, for what reason Izuku could not say. However, the speech managed to indirectly shift the attention away from Izuku for the remainder of the period. Classes came and went along with lunch, which Izuku did not take part in. He still didn't feel hungry for some strange reason. Before the 14-year-old knew it, the day had come to an end without a single incident. Sure, there was the occasional remark here or there, but other than that Izuku was pretty much left alone for the day. Maybe picking on the quirkless kid had finally worn itself out, or perhaps the recent villain incident was just that much of a hot topic. Regardless, the piece that the Greenette had was a welcome change. Izuku managed to get a lot of hero notes done today because of it. Upon hearing the final bell, Izuku waited for the rush of his classmates to settle before placing all of his belongings into his backpack. Throwing the straps over his shoulders, the teen made his way out of the classroom, the teacher not even bothering to acknowledge him. Walking through the mostly empty halls and courtyard, Izuku was treated to far fewer whispers than this morning. Thump. Out of the fucking way, shitty Deku. Katsuki growled after roughly bumping into the green-haired boy's shoulder. Ass sorry Kachan. Izuku mumbled submissively. TCH. The blonde bombshell grunted before stalking off, his hands firmly shoved into his pockets. That went better than the smaller boy expected, Katsuki, and not giving Izuku a verbal, or sometimes physical, beatdown was a rarity. Apparently Izuku's luck was finally turning around for the better. A general lack of attention, his classmates leaving him alone, and now Bakugo not even giving him the time of day. Izuku would have said it was divine intervention if not for the fact he quite literally was an angel. With nothing more to do, the Greenette began his trek back to his apartment, humming a tune to fill the silence. Throughout the journey Izuku's thoughts remained firmly centered around Gabriel and his words before departing. In the heat of the moment the armored warrior's words were easily accepted, though now that he thought about them Izuku couldn't wrap his head around the absurdity. Having ethereal wings and halo seemed rather tame compared to the other brief comments Gabriel made. Suddenly appearing on the moon and finding out that heaven and hell are very real. Not only that, but Izuku was supposedly chosen by God himself to be an angel for some unknown reason, despite his attempt to end his own life. Oh, and apparently there were 2 Earths, which meant that either Izuku time traveled or crossed into a different universe. His attempts to make sense of it all only left him more confused than anything else. Izuku felt as though he was going in circles, with more questions popping up with each potential answer. I hope Gabriel doesn't mind all the questions I have for him. Izuku massaged his temple as he attempted to calm his raging mind. Wait, how am I supposed to see him again? Now that Izuku was on the subject of yesterday's events, he recalled Gabriel saying how they will meet again very soon. In his stupefied state the teen essentially just nodded and accepted the words without so much as a second thought. He also might have gotten a tiny, okay a lot, bit sidetracked with his new wings. However, now with a new day Izuku could not help but wonder just how he would see Gabriel again. The middle schooler figured it would have to do with the golden energy and warm feeling that he felt yesterday. I wonder what that was. Maybe it was some kind of teleportation. The Greenette thought, his analysis side peeking through. I wonder what's the functionality of it. Can all angels do it? What are the activations required? Does it have any limitations regarding distance? Izuku mentally took notes, silently reminding himself to ask Gabriel about it. It managed to transport me from the moon back to the earth, Maybe. Before Izuku could think about it further, he was suddenly afflicted with the familiar warm sensation that he experienced yesterday. Taking a step back in surprise, the middle schooler's wings sprung out from the abrupt feeling. Glancing down at himself, Izuku managed to catch a brief glimpse of the same golden aura that surrounded Gabriel. The quick look was all the Greenette got before his vision blurred into a thin line. And just like that, Midoriya Izuku disappeared from the world once more without so much as a trace. Earth's moon, ruined temple. With a beam of golden majestic light, Izuku reappeared once more next to the dilapidated temple. Blinking with sheer confusion, the green-haired teen quickly glanced around his surroundings, finding himself in the middle of the campsite. Green orbs eventually landed onto the unforgettable, shining armor of Gabriel, who remained seated on a broken column. The angel lifted his head, as though he knew Izuku would arrive at that very moment. "Good you're here, we shall get started immediately," Gabriel said matter-of-factly. The armored man stood from his seated position. "Awa," Izuku blinked dumbly, still processing the sudden shift in scenery. "Your training, we begin today," the angel answered despite not even getting a question from the smaller boy. Attaching both of his swords to his right hip, Gabriel began walking toward the ruined temple, giving a gesture for Izuku to follow. "Come, ask your questions as we walk." "Ah, right," Izuku stuttered before stumbling over to walk beside the much larger angel. "Mr. Gabriel, how exactly did I get here? I was just walking home, then I just ended up here. I apologize for the suddenness. Until you learn how to warp yourself, I must do it for you," Gabriel explained briefly as the two continued their walk. Passing into the temple, the two angels made their way down a very spacious hallway. "We shall develop a time frame, so you will expect it from now on." "Warp," the middle schooler repeated the word with a confused voice. "One of the many abilities we possess as angels. Do not worry, I shall teach you how to utilize these powers," Gabriel stated clearly. The angel bent down to pick up and move a large chunk of marble column that stood in their path. With clear ease he placed the debris off the side. "Whoa!" Izuku stared in awe at the sheer strength displayed by his fellow angel. He took a glance at his hands, wondering if he could achieve the same level of brawn. "Do not be so surprised, by tomorrow I'll be having you do the same." The archangel chuckled lightly from Izuku's wide-eyed stare. "Isn't that a bit much? I mean, I just found out I was an angel yesterday." The nervousness of the Greenette was palpable in his words. "You doubt your abilities. We shall rectify that now." Gabriel plainly noted his helmet hiding his frown. Stepping to the side, the angel motioned toward a smaller chunk of debris. "Go and remove it from our path," the angel ordered, crossing his arms and waiting expectantly. With an anxious gulp, Izuku hesitantly made his way over to the pile of rubble, his palms sweating profusely. An unsure glance was sent back toward the elder angel, seeking some kind of sign on what to do. A firm, confident nod was sent his way, signaling for the teen to follow Gabriel's instructions. Swallowing thickly, Izuku bent down, hooking his hands underneath the column. Izuku expected to be met with the heavy resistance that would be expected from a column of such a size. He expected to fail considerably, struggling vainly in an attempt to get even the most minuscule of movement. What Izuku did not expect was to, with a bit of effort, lift the piece of debris into the air. The absolute gobsmacked expression the teen wore would have made anyone from how comical he looked. If his jaw could extend further, it probably would have hit the floor with a loud thud. That is, if his eyes didn't bulge out their sockets before then with how wide they were at the moment. "Now, place it to the side," Gabriel reminded Izuku with a parental tone. The armored angel may have had an amused smile as he observed his apprentice's expression, but he would never admit it. "Ah, right," the Greenette stuttered, snapping out of his stupor. With carefulness as though he was handling porcelain, Izuku gently placed the debris against the wall of the hallway. "It kind of feels like I'm lifting cardboard," Izuku noted in amazement, not expecting it to be that easy. That should be more than enough evidence to prove your strength. The archangel said plainly, continuing to walk down the corridor. Yeah, it's amazing. Izuku agreed, a large smile blossoming across his freckled face. What else can I do? The question was asked with obvious excitement despite an attempt to conceal it. You will learn as we progress through your training regimen. Gabriel answered with a casual wave of his hand. The two traveled in silence down the hallway for a brief moment before eventually coming to a low archway. Following Gabriel through the opening, Izuku was immediately met with the sight of a large room. Several rows of decrepit pews lined both sides of the room, leading to an equally ancient-looking altar. Broken stained glass showed fractured images of what the palace used to be. A sanctuary that has long since been abandoned by both the congregation and those that they prayed to. Izuku may not have been very religious, but even he could feel the lingering sanctity that once blessed this temple. The feeling reminded him of the sensation of warping, except the warmness was absent. The greenette was reminded of embers of a dying fire from how the lingering warmth seemed to flicker. Walking further through the nave, Izuku took in the details of the room with rapt attention. Gabriel for his part appeared far less interested in the scenery, walking towards the altar in a straight line. What is this place? Izuku asked quietly, continuing to look around the room in awe. It was once a safe haven for those seeking refuge or guidance. Gabriel answered solemnly, fondly tracing the wood of a bench. What happened to it? The middle schooler hesitantly inquired after hearing the tone of his fellow angel. Machines. The word was said with unfiltered loathing. They will stop at nothing to get their precious fuel, even if it means traveling here to hunt down the rest of humanity. Rest of humanity, Izuku repeated, his youthful features becoming tinged with anxiousness. Humanity is dead, wiped out by the machines. Gabriel bluntly revealed, ignoring the shocked gasp that Izuku let out. Sit Izuku, today's lesson will be that of history. Wordlessly the 14-year-old took a seat in the front pew while Gabriel took a seat on the steps of the altar. The humanity of this world is not so different from your own in some ways. There are simply some people who cannot resist their sinful ways. War, greed, and hatred are unfortunate side effects that came with the Father's gift of free will. Their progress was exponential, creating a technological age unlike anything else. Gabriel began sounding much older than Izuku had heard from him. Eventually though their hubris became insurmountable, creating the machines to explore both heaven and hell when their own world had been researched to its limit. They could not foresee that their own creations would turn on them, erasing them from existence. The archangel continued his explanation. No matter where they went the machines would follow, slaughtering everything in their sights in order to acquire their fuel. Gabriel said, pausing for a moment to allow Izuku to speak his mind. Fuel. What kind of fuel do they need that requires so much death? The middle schooler asked in a low tone. Blood. The armored warrior revealed. Anything that could bleed was murdered. No, that means, Izuku muttered, feeling his eyes become misty. Yes, no one was off limits for the machines. Men, women, and children alike were all slaughtered. Humanity fought back valiantly, but they could not fight forever. Gabriel placed a comforting hand on the teen's shoulder. Many of them met a heroic end if it is any consolation. What's left if everyone is gone now? The boy asked in a quiet voice. The somber aura emitting from him was palpable. Very little and soon nothing. Gabriel answered honestly, feeling a pang of sympathy when he saw Izuku slouch in hopelessness. The machines are relentless constructs, at the moment they are on track to wipe out the rest of all life on Earth. Despite my and our fellow brothers in arms effort, it shall happen sooner rather than later. And then what? What else could they possibly destroy after everything is gone? Izuku raised another question. While not confirmed we fear that they might find a way into the layers of heaven and hell. The archangel said with a sigh, now taking a seat beside his pupil. They couldn't do that, right? Izuku's voice was shaky as he looked at his fellow angel. Humanity underestimated the machines, we will not. We shall prepare for every outcome. The hardened steel in Gabriel's voice alleviated some of the worry that infected Izuku's mind. The two sat in silence for a moment, both for their own reasons. Gabriel knew his pupil was likely experiencing a wave of confusing thoughts and emotions. The angel figured the best way to handle it was to allow Izuku to figure it out himself. If the small, green-haired boy needed him, then he would be more than ready to lend his assistance. The Archangel's assumptions were not too far off. Izuku currently had a million things racing through his mind at ludicrous speeds. Finding out that humanity has become instinct was the last thing he expected to learn today. Izuku's empathetic nature would not allow him to process such information without feeling a torrent of sadness for the loss of life. He may not have known a single person, but Izuku's heart still ached for every life lost. The core tenet of being a hero was saving every possible person you can. But what if he couldn't save anyone? What if, despite having the power of an angel, Izuku was destined to repeat the mistakes of this earth? Would he too be forced to watch as his own home is rendered to ashes and cinders? No, I won't let that happen. Izuku clenched the fabric of pants tightly, a sudden fire igniting in his eyes. I'll protect everyone, just like a real hero should. I'll make sure of it. Though no words were spoken, Gabriel could practically feel the indomitable resolve radiating off Izuku in waves. The Archangel couldn't help but let out a prideful smirk behind his exotic helmet. He knew he made the right choice in taking up the middle schooler as his pupil, but it felt really good to have his decision validated. This kid, I tell him humanity is gone, and yet the fire in his eyes only seemed to grow stronger. Gabriel mentally chuckled. I wonder what else you have hiding under all that self-doubt, Izuku. Mr. Gabriel, I have a question. The greenette suddenly spoke up. Speak your mind, Izuku. Gabriel replied straightforwardly. Yesterday you said this earth is not my own. What did you mean by that? Izuku asked, remembering the angel's words from yesterday. Ah, that. You worry that your earth might be linked to this one. The angel gave a contemplative hum before continuing. Do not fret, for the two are exclusive from one another. The fate of this earth does not dictate yours. Yeah, okay. That's good. The teen visibly sagged with relief from the answer. Alright, I guess that means time travel is off the table. So, I guess this is a different dimension. You are taking this information far better than I expected. Gabriel admitted. Yeah, honestly I'm kinda just going along with it because I know if I don't I'll freak out like I normally do. Izuku chuckled while giving the armored man a shaky grin. And trust me, you don't want to see that at all. Indeed. Gabriel agreed, his armor clinking as he stood up from the bench. Now then, I believe it is time to discuss your training regimen. All right, I'm ready. Izuku nodded while giving his new mentor his full attention. Expect to be brought here around the same time as today from now on. You'll also be brought here every day unless I've told you otherwise. The angel explained with a strictness like that of a drill sergeant. Every day, won't I need some days to rest so I don't overstrain myself? The regiment laid out before him made the teen feel a bit intimidated if he was being honest. However, despite his apprehension, Izuku remained committed to learning under Gabriel. For mortals, yes, but we do not function in the same capacity. Our visage might be similar, however angelic physiology differs greatly from that of humans. Gabriel's answer was quick and informative. Have you not noticed the changes to yourself? Now that Izuku remembered, he hasn't eaten so much as a crumb today and yet he still doesn't feel the least bit hungry. Yeah, I haven't eaten a single thing today. Angels do not require food nor sleep like mortals do, however if you wish to do it for pleasure then by all means do so. The armored angel nodded as he continued his explanation. Our stamina and durability are also significantly higher. Believe it or not, but you're getting less time than what is required of normal trainees. I'm scared to ask what could be worse than an all-week training course. The middle schooler nervously chuckled. 7 days with each one consisting of 12 hours of physical training, 8 hours of academics, and 4 of leisure time. The older angel offhandedly revealed. Why yeah, I think I'll stick with your plan. Izuku's sweat dropped, feeling extremely grateful that he doesn't have to go through that. Make no mistake, I will be pushing you to your absolute limit to make up for the lack of time we have together. Gabriel firmly told the greenette. I will not be going easy on you. Right. Izuku stuttered before giving a resolute nod. He had a feeling Gabriel would say something like that. Excellent, now that we have that out of the way, follow. Gabriel motioned, walking towards the entrance that they had come in from. I need an understanding of where you stand physically. You shall perform a few tests so I can best judge your capabilities. Test 1, Agility. So, you just want me to jump? Izuku said, confused as he stared at his mentor. The two had their way back outside the temple where Gabriel had Izuku stand next to the most structurally stable wall he could find. In simple terms, yes, but the goal is to reach up there. Gabriel pointed toward the edge of the roof with an armored finger. The distance was roughly 60 feet high from where he had positioned Izuku. All right, here goes. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, the teen bent his legs as he stared up at his objective with a calculated gaze. His calves tensed as he focused all of his energy into his legs. When Izuku felt he was ready, he jumped. The ground beneath him cracked under the immense pressure generated by Izuku's leap. After picking up the column, the greenette figured he would go a lot higher than expected. Though apparently it wasn't enough to reach the roof, as Izuku was only about half of the way up. Two sizable craters formed in the moon rock as the green-haired boy plummeted back down to the ground. Feeling like he could do better, Izuku repeated the jump once more, putting a bit more power into his legs this time. He managed to make 3/4 of the way before falling back to the ground once more. A few more tries were attempted, but he could never quite break the 3/4 mark. All right, that is enough. Gabriel commanded with a firm tone. I have acquired what I needed, we move on now. Test 2, Speed. This one is fairly simple. You will run toward the outskirts of the forest, then back here. Gabriel explained with crossed arms. Both angels stood at the entrance to the temple, Gabriel leaning against a pillar while Izuku finished up his stretches. How will I know where to go if I get lost? Izuku asked, loosening up the last of his muscles. Do not get lost. Gabriel answered simply. All right. The greenette sweat dropped, not expecting such a blunt answer. Good, glad you understand. Now, begin. Caught off guard by the suddenness, Izuku stumbled a few steps as he clumsily began running toward the luminescent forest. After regaining his balance, Izuku broke into a steady run, feeling the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. With superhuman speed and reflexes, Izuku weaved through the glowing flora with ease. The green-haired teen almost wished he was back on Earth so he could feel the wind flowing through his hair. If anyone else were to be watching, they'd see a blue and green blur rushing through the forest at breakneck speeds. In less than a minute he found himself at the edge of the forest, stopping briefly to stare at the horizon. The vast, open landscape of the moon was breathtaking to say the least. If not for the time sensitivity of his test, Izuku might have spent a bit more time admiring the view. However, the greenette managed to tear his gaze away, turning around and speeding back into the forest. It may have been skewed in his eyes, but Izuku could swear he was traversing through the woods faster than before. In no time at all he could see the pile of columns and the dilapidated temple growing ever closer. Skidding his red shoes against the ground, Izuku came to a stop before Gabriel with a trail of dust in his wake. 1 minute and 23 seconds, impressive Izuku. Gabriel praised with a nod of his armored head. The average is around 2 minutes. Do you run professionally? The angel asked curiously. Not really, Izuku paused, remembering all the times he's had to run away from his many bullies. Just had a lot of practice is all. The middle schooler shuffled nervously on his feet, unable to make eye contact with his mentor. Yes of course. The archangel hummed thoughtfully, picking up the evasive aura almost immediately. Though he said nothing, Gabriel made a mental note to address the topic again at a later date. Regardless, well done, I am impressed by your display. Let us continue. Test 3, Strength. Didn't you already show me that I can do this? Izuku grunted, lifting up a column that was a bit bigger than the one he moved earlier. Yes, but I need to see what exactly your limit is at the moment. Gabriel answered while observing the teen off to the side. Though you have the strength of an angel, your powers are still relatively new. Compared to someone like myself, you have barely scratched the surface of what divine beings such as ourselves are capable of. Then how do I get strong like you? You said our physiology is different from a regular person's, so I doubt the answer lies in a gym. The middle schooler gave a huff of exertion as he picked up another piece of debris. It was bigger than the last but still significantly smaller than the one Gabriel managed to move. Ah, an attentive student. If only I had you as a classmate back in the academy. Gabriel chuckled good-naturedly. But you were right, the process of increasing our strength is different from that of mortals. A combination of learning to harness the light within you and age are the main factors in determining an angel's power. You're saying as I get older I'll just naturally get stronger? Izuku asked before attempting to pick up another fallen column. He noticeably struggled to lift the piece of marble off the ground. Indeed, though that will not be an excuse to slack off on your training. The armored angel confirmed before continuing with a steely tone. Wouldn't dream of it, MMPH. The greenette let out a loud grunt as he tried with all his might to lift up the next piece of debris. Though he managed to get it off the ground, he could not hold it for more than a few seconds before dropping it. I'm sorry, sir, I don't think I can do it. Apologies are unnecessary, I told you this test is to gauge your abilities. Gabriel reminded in a firm voice. The angel observed the size of the column, finding it to be a bit shorter than the one he moved. For a scrawny kid he isn't too bad. The angel thought, impressed by his student's display. Come, there is one more test before I send you home for the day. Test 4, Flight. Shouldn't I, be given a few lessons before trying this? Despite the other tests proving his superhuman abilities, Izuku was still hesitant. Gabriel had grabbed him by the back of his collar, like one would to a kitten, and leapt onto the roof of the temple. Now roughly 60 feet off the ground, Izuku felt a pit in his stomach form when his fellow angel explained the last test. The greenette would have laughed and told the armored man he was really good at jokes if not for the usual seriousness that plagued Gabriel's words. Now here he was, shuffling nervously as he stared over the edge with clear uncertainty. This is usually the easiest one, Gabriel said casually. Wait, really? Izuku looked back at his teacher with an incredulous look. No, the angel deadpanned. I simply said it in hopes that it would calm your mind. I think it would have worked if you didn't tell me otherwise. The green-haired teen mumbled. Probably, but we're angels, so honesty is basically ingrained in our blood. Gabriel shrugged. Do you have any kind of tips that can help me out? The middle schooler couldn't hide the desperation in his voice. Do not think, simply let your wings carry you. Gabriel offered his help in his own cryptic way. I'm sure you have noticed by now, your wings operate independently. They will aid you should you need them. No action is required on your part, simply have faith, Izuku. Right, yeah, just trust in my wings. Got it, Izuku repeated, feeling his nerves ease somewhat. Just have faith, trust in my wings. Okay, I can do this, just have faith. Taking one final deep breath, Izuku took careful steps until the tips of his shoes were off of the edge. Closing his eyes, the greenette allowed himself to lean forward, feeling the roof underneath his feet disappear. For what felt like the longest time, Izuku kept his green orbs shut, bracing for the feeling of his face colliding with the ground. However, when the impact never came, the teen took the chance to hesitantly open his eyes. Said orbs grew wide with shock and awe when he saw that he was still relatively high. Straightening himself up, Izuku glanced around himself to see that he was suspended in the air. His ethereal wings flapped occasionally, allowing Izuku to hover, very shakily but hover all the same. A large, energetic grin stretched across the boy's freckled cheeks, followed shortly by a quick cheer. Slowly and still somewhat wobbly, Izuku began to float upward. He was surprised by how light the whole thing felt. He expected some kind resistance but was met with none, so many possibilities ran through the greenette's head with this newfound information. Look, Mr. Gabriel, I'm flying. Ha ha ha. Izuku let out a childish laugh as he ascended upward to meet the gaze of his mentor. A little unstable but flying all the same. Gabriel noted, though he still offered some praise toward the teen. Well done, Izuku. It usually takes a few tries before one is able to hover like you are. Why yeah, it's a little scary but kinda fun. Izuku carefully descended back onto the roof, his legs trembling once he touched solid ground once more. We shall hone your skills so that you can do so with ease. The Archangel gave a low, contemplative hum. I suppose Test 5 will have to wait till later. He mumbled to himself though Izuku was able to hear it. Test 5. The middle schooler repeated, confused. Gabriel himself flying was the final one, so how could there possibly be 5? Durability. The armored angel answered bluntly. Oh. Izuku blanched, suddenly understanding just what his mentor was getting at. Relax kid, just making a little joke. Gabriel chuckled lightly upon seeing Izuku's pale face. You did good today, I am proud. A quick tussle of green locks were given with an armored gauntlet. Thank you sir. The teen beamed, doing his absolute best not to cry from the heartwarming praise. It appears our time together must come to an end, we shall resume your training tomorrow. The angel removed his hand from his pupil's head, stepping away to float into the air. Be prepared for a vigorous exercise. Yes sir. Izuku nodded resolutely, standing tall and confident. Then I look forward to it, my student. The golden helmet hid the prideful smile Gabriel wore. Golden energy began to surround both angels. May your woes be few and your days many. The warm sensation that engulfed Izuku came and went as it had the last 2 times, leaving the teen on the same sidewalk he was taken from. Glancing up at the sky, he could see that the sun had already begun setting, meaning that his mom was probably minutes away from panic calling him. With his newfound speed Izuku began jogging toward his home, already constructing an excuse for why he would be out this late again. With each step the wind blew through his hair with a comfortable intensity. Today was a strange day, but Izuku couldn't lie and say it wasn't a good one. For the first time in a long time Izuku felt great. His school life is improving, if ever so slightly and for the wrong reasons. He found out he has way more powers than simply having a cool set of wings and a halo. And best of all he managed to learn how to put those wings to use, even if it was something as simple as hovering. Yeah, after today Izuku couldn't wait for tomorrow to come and what his new mentor would bring. 5 months. That's how long Izuku had been learning under Gabriel since his fateful meeting with the Archangel. 5 long and grueling months of the most intensive physical training Izuku had ever experienced in his life. All the all-might workout routines in the world could not hold a candle to the sheer intensity of Gabriel's regiment. If Izuku wasn't visibly on the verge of collapsing on the ground, Gabriel made sure the next day was 10 times worse. If not for his superhuman abilities, the teen was sure he would have dropped dead after the 3rd week. It started out simple enough: bench a column here, sprint around the temple there, things Izuku somewhat anticipated. However, by the end of the 3rd week, Gabriel deemed the greenette worthy of increasing the difficulty of his exercises. Instead of lifting 1 pillar, now he had to do 3 at a time. Rather than running around the temple, Izuku now had to run halfway around the moon then back. That wasn't even considering the flying lessons, which were by far the most difficult part for the middle schooler. He managed to master the basics of hovering and light flying fairly quickly, much to his excitement and his mentor's approval. However, whatever newfound confidence he had in his flying ability was quickly shattered. It was only a matter of time before Gabriel deemed Izuku ready to escalate his flying exercises to a more advanced stage. Now, instead of simply bringing himself up to higher elevations, Izuku now had to fly at breakneck speeds. It certainly didn't help the middle schooler's anxiety when his mentor introduced a timer to his courses. What started out as 10 minutes quickly became less than 2 with each passing lap Izuku completed. That wasn't considering Gabriel also decided to introduce hazards in later courses, further upping the challenge of each lap. There were well over a dozen occasions where the new angel face planted into the ground or spiraled out of the air because he lost concentration. Of course, Gabriel wasn't heartless. He made sure that Izuku was not injured during any of his falls. Before promptly ordering the green-haired teen to try again once he was sure Izuku was unharmed. Despite the mercilessness of Gabriel's training, Izuku had never once backed down or gave up, no matter how much his body protested otherwise. Through sheer will alone the greenette pushed past the aching of his limbs and soreness of his muscles. Every time he fell, he picked himself back up and tried again even harder than last time. Though Gabriel said nothing, he would not lie about the pride that would envelop his being whenever he saw the determined look in his student's eyes. The Archangel had also noticed the subtle shifts in Izuku's demeanor during the 5 months. The green-haired teen stood straight and tall rather than his usual slouched and submissive posture. Gabriel could also see the fruits of his training in Izuku's physique. While not bulging with muscles, the beginning of his lean build defined the middle schooler's figure well enough. It was also one of the many things Izuku had to explain to his mom when she began to notice the changes herself. 3 months ago, Izuku stepped through the front door with a tired sigh. Gabriel's lesson today had drained whatever energy school hadn't already taken. Taking off his shoes, Izuku couldn't wait to drop onto his soft mattress for the night. Though he'd have to convince his mom why he was skipping out on dinner before he could. In an attempt to throw off her suspicion, Izuku had begun eating every time Inko offered. Of course, it did nothing for him, but it pleased his mom, and that was all Izuku really cared about. On several occasions he thought about revealing his new heritage, however the greenette could not conjure a single scenario where that would end without Inko passing out. Though he did feel somewhat bad about feeding his mom half-truths, Izuku promised himself that one day he would reveal everything to her. I don't smell anything. I wonder if she's working late again. The teen angel idly wondered as he wandered into the living room. Or not. Izuku paled somewhat slightly as he came face to face with Inko, who appeared as though she was waiting for him. This probably isn't good. Hey mom. Izuku gave an awkward wave to the woman. Hello Izu, how was your day? Inko politely responded. Was all right. Is something wrong? Nervousness laced each syllable that left the teen's mouth. No, I just would like to have a talk with you, she quickly corrected with a waving motion. Ah, okay. Izuku gulped anxiously. Whenever someone said they wanted to have a talk, it usually never meant anything good. He took a seat across from Inko, his foot tapping against the ground rapidly. So Izuku, I've noticed some changes with you these past few months. The green-haired woman trailed off. Have you now? The angel stuttered, feeling his nerves spike dramatically. Oh no, did she figure out I was lying to her? I didn't say anything, unless of course. She probably noticed my irregular eating habits or heard me mutter in my sleep. The greenette's mind raced. Yes, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. I knew this would happen sooner or later. Inko continued seriously. You did. Izuku gained a look of confusion. Did Mr. Gabriel reveal himself to her? If so, why didn't he tell me? He pondered, wondering just how his mom figured out his secret so quickly. You're a growing boy, Izuku, so you're going to experience some changes to your body. The matriarch trailed off before clearing her throat and continuing. Ahem, I'm sure you've learned about puberty in your health class. But I still think it's important we discuss this in case you are confused about anything. Quote ? If the middle schooler could see himself, he'd be treated to the sight of his green eyes practically bulging out his skull. The realization of what his mom was actually talking about evaporated whatever response Izuku had ready. He could almost feel the gears in his head grinding to a halt at the sudden curveball Inko threw at him. A part of Izuku wished that Inko was talking about his angelic blood rather. It would be a lot less embarrassing than discussing puberty with his mom. Like I said, there's no reason to be ashamed, it was bound to happen. Frankly, I'm unsure of how to handle it either, Inko admitted, ignoring the fish out of water expression on her son. Said teen stuttered, unable to form a single coherent word. But I'm willing to lend whatever ear you need to help you through this difficult time. The woman trudged on, nodding to herself and completely oblivious to Izuku's flushed demeanor. I don't the green-eyed teen continued to jumble his words together. Let's start with the basics. You'll start to notice hair growing in places that weren't there before. The elder Midoriya furthered her, too informative in Izuku's eyes, explanation. Places like your chest, legs, armpits, and, down there. Mom! Izuku shouted, his face glowing red with embarrassment. I know what puberty is, I've just wanting nothing more than to end this discussion. The teen racked his brain for any excuse he could give. I've been training. For the entrance exam to UA. A half-truth, he just didn't mention all the other parts. Training. Inko gained a bewildered expression, not expecting such an answer. Yeah, I had decided if I wanted to get into UA I'd need to put some effort into making myself more physically fit. The greenette replied while rubbing the back of his hair sheepishly. Since you know I got my quirk recently I figured I'd need to work extra hard. Another half-truth, one that didn't sit well in Izuku's heart. He so desperately wanted to reveal everything, but he just couldn't, not now. Ah, I see. A glint of worry appeared briefly in her eyes before it was blinked away. Just, promise me you'll take care of yourself, Izuku. I don't want to see you get hurt. Don't worry, Mom. Izuku got up from his seat and made his way over to the woman, wrapping her in a firm embrace. I promise, I'll take care of myself and become a great hero. Like I always said I would. He shot her an encouraging smile as he pulled back. I know you will, sweetie. Inko smiled, happy tears welling up in her eyes. I know. Present day asterisk. Izuku hadn't noticed at first, but he later came to realize that his mom was right, and a lot had changed since the day he met Gabriel. Other than the obvious changes to his body, he began to notice that his school and home life had also experienced adjustments. The almost dead silent nights that used to occupy the Midoriya residence were but a distant memory. No longer was there the awkward tension that seemed to strain every conversation mother and son had. It was a welcome change for both Izuku and Inko. The same could somewhat be said for the green-haired teen's school life as well, though not nearly as prominent. The majority of the whispers and insults that were thrown his way had tampered off. Sure, some students, usually lower level, threw a couple of remarks here and there, but it was nothing compared to the torment Izuku had faced before. Even Bakugo had seemed to lay off for the most part. Of course, the bombastic blonde couldn't help but let a few threats through his teeth whenever the topic of UA came up. All things considered, Izuku would count it as an improvement compared to the last decade of his life. Plus, the soon-to-be high schooler was making quite the progress towards being ready for the entrance exam. With 5 months down and only 5 left, Izuku was confident that he would be ready by then. If only Gabriel would summon him already. Mr. Gabriel is never this late, I wonder what's the hold-up. Izuku idly wondered, sitting on one of the park's benches while sketching in his notebook. The elder angel had drilled into the greenette that time was an important factor that would not be wasted needlessly. If he was so much as a minute off, the armored man would ensure to make up for every second that wasn't spent training. So, it was a bit concerning when after an hour of their usual meeting time Izuku remained on his earth. I hope everything is okay. The middle schooler let out a sigh, closing his notebook. Last time he seemed really annoyed. Something about counselors, I think. He recalled with a frown. Whatever worries the green-haired boy may have had were disintegrated when he felt the familiar warm sensation envelop his body. Like so many times before, in the blink of an eye and a golden flash, Izuku was gone from his world once more. However, glowing forest and ruined temple were not what greeted Izuku's green eyes. Instead, he was on some kind of platform, out seemingly in the middle of space. The only visible thing the greenette could make out were a large group of gray cubes that formed a huge square. That and some kind of retro arcade machine that Gabriel was currently fiddling with. Good, you're here, let us begin immediately. The metallic voice of Gabriel broke Izuku from his thoughts. The angel remained in front of the machinery, tapping the screen several times in rapid succession. What is this place? Izuku asked in amazement, walking toward his mentor. This is the next step in your training. The armored warrior turned to look at his pupil. Welcome to the cyber grind. Cyber grind. The teen tested the words on his tongue. A highly advanced simulation, repurposed for the use to train angels when they've reached higher classes in the academy. the Archangel explained promptly to his student. It can also be used by other soldiers to sharpen their skills further without risking their life. So what is it exactly? And how does it work? Izuku stood beside Gabriel, staring at the terminal screen with interest. This terminal allows for a wide range of modes that can be used. I'll be using the horde function, where you will fight waves of enemies until you cannot continue. Gabriel explained, showing the function of the machine. He pressed a button before adjusting the slider that appeared on screen till it was about a quarter of the way. Lucky for you, the difficulty will remain at a lower level. For now. Alright, seems simple enough. The younger angel nodded in understanding. Good, now make your way onto the grid. Gabriel turned back to the terminal while nodding towards the cluster of gray cubes. Yes, sir. Blue wings materialized as Izuku jumped from the platform, using the momentum to glide onto the grid with ease. So how is this going to work? Do I get to practice or warm up first? The teen shouted up at his mentor. Ha ha, no. The armored angel chuckled before bluntly answering. Don't worry though, your combatants won't be able to seriously harm you. It'll just hurt. A lot. Why, yeah, okay. Izuku gulped, not at all liking the borderline evil laughter that left his mentor's mouth. Before he could voice any concerns, the ground beneath the teen began to shift, nearly causing him to lose his balance. Using his wings to steady himself, Izuku watched in complete awe as the gray cubes began to rapidly move. In a matter of seconds, the flat grid had been morphed into a rudimentary arena. There were several small towers lined along the edges with steep ramps and staircases making up most of the middle. Connecting the slopes together were low walls that were barely taller than Izuku himself. Standing in the center of the arena, Izuku heard several loud, laser-like noises around him. Quickly looking around, Green Eyes observed how several bright blue flashes appeared across the field. Izuku was able to identify 5 individual flashes, 3 closer to the center with the other 2 at the edge. The middle schooler quickly began to form a plan on how best to take down his opponents without getting overwhelmed. However, his thoughts came to a halt when the flashes disappeared, revealing the robotic creatures. The 3 closest to Izuku were humanoid in shape, with a long angular head that had 2 slits on both sides of its head. A long black cloak that was covered in bronze armor made its body, hazard stripes over its chest and arm pieces. 2 exhaust ports and a red fuel tank were connected to the machine's back. A long, thick cable connected the tank to a gun-shaped object that was held in its hands. Low, robotic breathing as though it was breathing through a gas mask could be heard coming from its head. The 2 other machines were not nearly as intimidating, being no bigger than a camera that news anchors often used. It was completely purple, save for the glowing pink eye and lines that could be seen over its body. There was a single exhaust that emitted a low white fire from its back, causing it to hover in the air. What are these things? Izuku thought in both wonder and cautiousness. They look so advanced. Could these be some of the machines Mr. Gabriel was referring to? Caught in his own thoughts, the teen failed to notice that the robots had already begun to move in rapid fashion. The 3 humanoid figures quickly approached, aiming their weapons at the angel with malicious intent. Izuku could not have foreseen that a great stream of fire would burst from the barrel. Giving a yelp of surprise, the middle schooler quickly used his wings to fly backward away from the flood of flames. Unfortunately, his reaction was a bit too slow, causing his left shoulder and forearm to be slightly scorched by the heat. Street cleaners are some of the more adaptive machines there are. They will take advantage of any weakness they detect, no matter how small. Gabriel called out to the boy with a flat tone. His arms crossed over his chest as he critically observed Izuku from the top platform. Why, yeah, I think I got it. Izuku shouted back, hissing in pain from the burning sensation of his left arm. Glancing down briefly, he could see that his pale skin was now covered with a new angry red color. Okay, just a surface burn, nothing too bad. With a powerful flap of his wings, the greenet flew higher into the sky, noticing how the street cleaners seemed to follow his direction but not react. They don't seem to have any range options, so it's probably best if I keep my distance and... Bang! Before Izuku could finish his thought, he was suddenly struck in the back by a powerful force. Letting out a grunt of pain, the angel in training began to spiral in the air before slamming his back against one of the towers on the edge of the grid. A loud thumping sound was heard as Izuku slid down the structure onto the ground. Ah! A groan of pain escaped the middle schooler, blinking away the blurriness of his vision to see one of the purple machines looking at him with its pink eye. Green eyes widened when said optic began to fill with an orange energy. Using the ground as a backboard, Izuku quickly sprung from his downed position. As he flew to the side, he could see 3 orange projectiles burst from the machine's eye. Drones are simple-minded in their programming but can be quick enough to dodge your attacks if not careful. The armored angel shouted down once more. They're also highly explosive. Explosive, huh? The middle schooler mumbled, dodging another volley of projectiles. If that's the case and those ones use flamethrowers, a plan soon began to form within his mind, one that would ensure to capitalize on both machines' weaknesses. Nodding to himself, Izuku flew through the air with great speed, dodging the fire of the drones while also corralling the street cleaners. Using one of the towers as covered, Izuku waited until he could hear the sound of an approaching drone. With lightning-quick reflexes, the greenette flew over the structure, snatching the machine out of the air. Being far stronger than it, Izuku forced the machine to point its optic at its fellow companion. Unable to recognize the change of target, the drone shot its 3 orbs from its pink eye without any hesitation. By the time the second drone recognized the projectiles were rapidly approaching it, they had already struck the robot. 3 medium-sized holes suddenly appeared through its purple plating and pink optic. Before the machine could even process the damage, it had already begun to descend from the air. Landing on the ground, a small explosion, scattering metal and wires across the gray ground. With the only other ranged enemy taken out, Izuku swiftly jammed his hand into the front of the drone he was holding. Letting out a yell, the teen ripped out the machine's pink eye, crushing it in his hand with ease. Using his wings to propel himself higher, Izuku reared his hand back before throwing the robot with all his might at the street cleaners. Said machines had cluttered together underneath Izuku, waiting for the boy to eventually get within range of their flamethrowers. Unfortunately for them, the drone that Izuku threw crashed into the ground with its own explosion. The blast was enough to ignite the tanks on the back of the street cleaners, causing a chain reaction of combustion. Well done, Izuku. Gabriel praised from the upper platform. Despite encountering these machines for the first time, you adapted quickly identifying their shortcomings and using it to your advantage. Thank you, sir. The younger angel panted, adrenaline beginning to wear off. Allow me to offer you some advice before we continue, the archangel said, staring down at Izuku's form with indifference. The machines are relentless, so you must be even more ruthless. Speed, aggression, and quick thinking will serve you well. If you find yourself on the defensive, then you are losing the battle. Gabriel offered plainly, his experience showing in his words alone. Yes, sir. I'll do my best, Izuku resolutely promised, ignoring the stinging sensation of his left arm and back. Let us really begin then. Gabriel smiled pridefully behind his helmet. With each passing round, the satisfaction within the armored angel grew as he watched his student tear apart each machine. The greenette had really taken his mentor's words to heart, ending his opponents with swift, decisive action. Not only that, but Izuku managed to do it with such creativity that Gabriel was somewhat convinced his student didn't even need a weapon. Even when said teen was damaged, he continued to fight with unparalleled ferocity that one would not expect from him. The ever-changing environment, projectiles shot by machines, or even the robots themselves were all used effectively. Using a tower to propel himself faster to take out a drone in the air, having a street cleaner torch its own ally, or throwing a drone like a bowling ball to trip other machines were but a few examples. Even with the increasing number of enemies, Izuku never let up his offensive approach. Gabriel could see not a single move was wasted, everything had a purpose to it. Whether it be setting up for a group annihilation or gaining more momentum to outpace the machines, Izuku made sure everything he did would be useful. Good, very good, Izuku. Gabriel praised, watching as his pupil smashed the last street cleaner. I believe it's almost time to call it here. Consider this last round your final test for the day. The Archangel moved toward the terminal, slightly adjusting the slider upward before activating the simulation once more. Izuku ascended into the air when he felt the ground beneath him begin to shift once more, his hands twitching as he prepared him to attack at a moment's notice. The cubes rapidly rearranged themselves, forming one of the more interesting arenas. While all the others were dynamic, this one was fairly plain. 4 staircases were formed, leading to a medium-sized tower that made up the center of the arena while the edges remained flat. As quickly as the battlefield formed, so did the forms of the machines begin to materialize, Izuku noticing that there were 9 flashes this time. He could easily identify the 5 street cleaners, however, the other 4 machines were new to him. The first pair were fairly small white and gray insect-looking robots. Its body was shaped like that of a harpoon gun, being carried by a set of thin, sharp legs. A metallic claw was placed inside the launcher, a green light glowing from the slits at the base of its body. The second pair were similar to the street cleaners in body shape but lacked the black cloth and bronze armor. Instead, its metal body could be seen quite clearly, with a dark gray chassis covering the internals of the machine. 2 glowing red slashes acted as the robot's eyes, which immediately locked onto Izuku's flying form. Though this set of machines carried no weapon of any kind, it was clear that the metal fist it had could deal just as much damage. Without wasting a second, lest he add another injury to his body, Izuku flew toward a street cleaner that had materialized at the edge of the arena. Unfortunately, a tight clamping engulfed his right leg. Quickly looking down, he could see that the new machine's claw had snared him. With robotic strength, the robot pulled its barrel-shaped head, causing the cable that connected to the claw to yank Izuku out of the air. With a yelp of surprise, the greenette couldn't fight the sudden pull, leading him to crash into the center of the arena. Seeing how their opponent was incapacitated, the street cleaners and other 2 humanoid machines converged on his location. Chiding himself mentally for not being more aware, Izuku hastily ripped the claw from his shin. Unfortunately for him, a street cleaner had already made its way to his position, pointing its flamethrower at the teen's face. Using his superhuman speed, Izuku quickly dashed over to the robot, grabbing the barrel of its weapon. The action caused the trajectory of the flames to fire harmlessly in the air. Applying his strength, the weapon was then ripped from the robot's hands before it was thrown off to the side. Not relenting his aggression, Izuku seized the machine by its neck, slamming it into the ground. Its angular head bent under the force, causing several sparks to fly. Out of the corner of his eye, the greenette could see a pair of street cleaners approaching from his left. Rag! With a mighty yell, Izuku lifted the body and threw it at the approaching machines. The first nimbly dodged to the side, avoiding the makeshift projectile, the other was not nearly as lucky. The sound of metal scraping against metal was heard as the 2 collided into a set of tangled limbs. Not caring for its comrade's plight, the first street cleaner continued to charge forward, shooting a jet of fire at Izuku. The green-haired teen was more than prepared this time, swiftly dashing to the side out of harm's reach. Once the flames had stopped flowing, Izuku burst forward in a great show of speed. A pale hand reached out and grabbed the head of the machine, crushing it into a crumbled pile of metal with ease. Before the body could even fall onto the floor, the rest of the street cleaners had surrounded Izuku, all ready to burn the angel to ash. Keeping a level head, Izuku waited until he could see the beginning of the flames coming from their barrels. Blue wings spread wide before flapping powerfully, sending the green-haired teen soaring into the air. Unable to adjust their aim, the 4 beams of fire were sent towards the motionless body of the destroyed street cleaner. Almost immediately, the tank on its back ignited, creating a powerful explosion that wiped out the 4 machines. I hate those things, Izuku thought while briefly catching his breath. Shink. The sound instantly set Izuku on high alert, his angelic reflexes kicking into gear before he could even process what he was doing. His body twisted mid-air, dodging the claw that nearly brought him down to the ground once more. Seeing an opportunity present itself, Izuku grabbed the retracting cable. Using both hands, the middle schooler pulled with all his might, ripping the restraining machine from the ground. Hog. Izuku grunted, using the robot as a makeshift flail to bash the other insect-looking machine. The metal between the two smashed together, creating a loud banging sound that echoed across the arena. Not satisfied, Izuku brought his arms back before swinging the robot in an overhead arc onto the other machine. Now an indistinguishable pile of scrap, the angel let go of the cable. Before Izuku could so much as take a breath, he was suddenly struck with a heavy weight that seemed to attach itself to his back. Metallic arms wrapped around his throat and painfully gripped his green locks, putting him in an ironclad headlock. Naturally, Izuku's own arms shot out to pull at the robotic limbs that were currently trying to choke him out. "Let me go," the middle schooler shouted. With a visceral yell, he ripped the arms from his neck before throwing his attacker over his shoulder. The machine crashed to the ground with a sharp crack, but otherwise looked no worse for wear. Seeing firsthand how powerful this one was, Izuku decided that keeping it off balance was the best form of attack. Descending feet first, he landed roughly on the machine's chassis, further embedding it into the ground. A foot was raised with the intent to crush the robot's head into pieces. However, Izuku would never get the chance as he was tackled by the second new machine. Knowing that if he was forced onto the ground he would be at a great disadvantage, Izuku's wings flared as he took off into the air. The machine remained relentless, still clinging to the teen with unhuman determination. A metal hand attempted to grab Izuku's neck, but it was quickly knocked away by a pale one. Izuku tried to counter with a grab of his own, but his wrist was caught by the machine. Man and metal engaged in a mid-air grappling battle, with the former spiraling constantly in an attempt to gain the upper hand. Eventually the greenette was able to successfully seize the machine by its metallic throat after expertly twisting his body through the air. Its hands attempted to pry the digits off, but Izuku's grip remained ironclad. Digging his other hand into the chassis for leverage, Izuku began to pull. The sound of creaking metal was heard as the middle schooler yanked the machine's head clean from its body in one fluid motion. Throwing the body and head to the ground, fierce green eyes locked onto the final machine, which had managed to right itself once more. Landing on the ground with a powerful gust of wind, Izuku confidently strode toward the robot, an aura of resolve radiating from his form. The robot attempted a haymaker toward the teen's face, but its fist was caught easily. With ease the joint was snapped before the entire metal limb was ripped from its socket. Uncaring about its damage, another punch was thrown, which was met with the same result. With no way to stop him, the angel shoved his hands into the machine's chest piece. Using the last of his strength and with a loud shout, Izuku ripped the robot clean in half. Ha, 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 Izuku huffed, dropping to his knees as his adrenaline finally wore off for good. Ha ha. Amazing. Simply amazing. The boisterous laughter and clapping of Gabriel triumphed over the heavy breathing of his student. Now that is the power of an angel. Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. The younger angel acknowledged with a grateful, tired smile. Tethers and specters are no easy enemies to dismantle, yet you handled them perfectly and with the viciousness they deserve. The archangel's wings sprouted from his back, allowing him to descend onto the grid, which had begun to revert back to its original flat structure. And all without using your light or a weapon. It was a tough battle, but I followed your advice, Mr. Gabriel. Izuku stood up shakily, his body reminding him of the many injuries he sustained. I tried being fast and aggressive. Don't be so modest, my pupil. You handled yourself better than soldiers who have actually seen battle. Gabriel waved away the greenette's attempt at being modest. You have more than proven you are ready for the cyber grind. We must merely refine your style of combat. A comforting armored hand was placed onto the boy's shoulder. All right, sir. Izuku smiled, his heart fluttering from how much his mentor was praising him. I'll continue to work even harder. That I have no doubt. Now hold still. The armored warrior said before drawing his hand back, keeping it hovering above Izuku's chest. A light, golden glow appeared within the angel's hand, which began to envelop the teen's entire body. The feeling of being submerged into warm water was felt by Izuku, earning a blissful sigh from the boy. His aching muscles and stinging sensation of his burn and a few cuts seemed to evaporate with each passing second. Once Gabriel pulled his gauntlet away, Izuku stared in amazement as his injuries seemed to have vanished as though they never existed. In fact, the greenette felt even more energized now than he did when he first began today's training. "Whoa, what was that?" Izuku asked, staring at his now burn-free arm. I feel great, even better than when I first started. The Father's Light has many uses, one of which is to cure injuries. While I'm not as proficient as experienced healers, I believe I'm more than capable of dealing with a few cuts and a burn." Gabriel explained, watching his amusement at his student's odd expression. "Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. I feel much better now." The middle schooler sincerely expressed his gratitude. "Think nothing of it, I need you in your best shape if we are to continue using the cyber grind." The Archangel replied back easily. "Speaking of, I believe it is time we end your training for the day. Tomorrow we shall continue where we have left off." The angel turned away, flying back toward the terminal as Izuku's form was covered with golden energy. "Until next time, my pupil. See you tomorrow, sir." Izuku called back before he was transported back to the park bench once more. For a moment the teen remained seated, basking in the rays of the sunset that shone onto his freckled face. His mind began to wander, thinking of how his life had changed so much in just 5 months. Despite the grueling physical labor that he endured, Izuku couldn't help but note how much happier he's been. Maybe it was because his relationship with his mom was beginning to repair itself, or maybe it was from the lack of bullying he's had to endure. Both were valid answers, but neither could hold a candle to what Izuku thought was the main reason. He was finally making progress on his dream of becoming a great hero, undeniably real progress. Sure, he may have applied to UA before he found out he was an angel, but a part of the greenette knew that it would amount to nothing. He was quirkless with nothing to make up for it other than his knack for analyzing quirks. But now Izuku had a real chance. He was faster, stronger, and could fly with equally quick speed. "I'll become a great hero now, one that will protect everyone with a smile on his face," Izuku thought with hardened resolve. With his dream attainable now, the team would stop at nothing to achieve it. "Just watch, one day I'll make sure everyone feels safe just because I'm there," the middle schooler promised to himself, standing up from the bench and beginning his walk home. "All right class, remember your essays are due at the end of the week," Izuku's homeroom teacher lazily drawled as the final bell rang. Almost immediately the rustling sound of papers being shoved into backpacks and the excited chatter of students reverberated through the room. Conversations that were paused resumed as right where they left off. The usual cliques of friends quickly formed, engaging in their own conversation as they continued to pack their belongings. Some discussed club activities, others recent movies or games that came. However, the bulk of the talk came from the excitement that surrounded the upcoming heroics entrance exam. "Can you believe the exam is only a few days away?" a raven-haired boy said in a contained voice. "Yeah, it's kinda unreal," another student within the same group replied. "We've talked about being heroes for years and now we finally got a shot at it. Some of us more than others." A glance was sent towards the retreating form of Bakugo, who just left the classroom with his usual scowl. Well, of course Bakugo will get accepted, his quirk is like crazy overpowered. A sharp-toothed girl rolled her eyes at the obvious implication. "What about everyone else who's trying out?" I dunno. Their quirks aren't nearly as impressive." "It's not about the quirk, it's how you use it. I bet all the girls tell you that," was the snarky comment. "Ha ha, very funny," the middle schooler deadpanned amusedly. "He's kinda got a point, you know. Better to have a quirk than not have one at all." A not-so-subtle look was sent towards Midoriya's direction. The group of students were surprised to see that their quirkless classmate gave no indication that he cared for their comments, if he heard them at all. The trembling and shameful bowing of his head that everyone expected never came. In fact, upon taking a closer look, the group of middle schoolers found there was something off about Izuku. They couldn't place their finger on it, but something about the green-haired boy was different. "Is it me or is Deku different?" One student struggled to say, unsure of how to describe what he was seeing. Yeah, I can see it too. Weird, right? He does look a little taller. Nah, that can't be right. The schoolgirl rebutted. I think he's always been that tall, he just slouches a lot. Are you sure? He looks taller than Bakugo now. It's either that or he got a haircut. Okay, that definitely can't be it, was the quick reply. That mop of green hair is the most memorable thing about him besides his quirklessness. What are you, his stalker or something? What? No you. As the students continued to argue amongst themselves, they failed to notice said subject of their conversation calmly exited the classroom. Their observation, while accurate to some degree, did not fully encapsulate the changes of their classmate. As Izuku walked through the halls of Aldera, his straight posture was overlooked. The same could also be said for his confident aura and neutral expression. Not a single person noticed how the meek and submissive Deku now carried himself with the resolve of an aspiring hero. Granted, the students and faculty of Aldera were not the only ones to miss this drastic difference in character. Izuku himself was also blind to these changes, unaware of just how much Gabriel's teachings have affected him. Although it was to be expected given how laser-focused the green-eyed boy was focused on preparing for the entrance exam. Which, unsurprisingly, was what occupied his thoughts as he traveled to the park. I can't believe 10 months have already passed, it feel like yesterday that I just met Mr. Gabriel. Izuku recollected as he walked along the sidewalk. Izuku knew that time could pass by quickly when one was hyper-focused on what's in front of them, but he was still somewhat stunned by the change. The many hours spent training with his fellow angel that seemed to last for eternity in the moment now appeared minuscule in comparison. Even the schoolwork on top of his training didn't seem to overwhelm Izuku in any way. I wonder if I can get a day off for the entrance exam. The young angel mused to himself. Mr. Gabriel probably won't be too happy that something is cutting into our training time. Izuku could feel his lip curl upwards at the mere thought of his mentor going on another rant about the value of their time together. While Izuku hasn't been the one to start such lectures, there were things on Gabriel's side that did. More often than not it came back to a council that the Archangel worked under. The middle schooler tried asking Gabriel about the specifics of his frustrations, but his mentor merely brushed the topic to the side. Though Izuku's keen senses could sometimes pick up snippets of the other angels grumbling. Something about not wanting his student to deal with the bureaucratic balderdash that comes from the council. As the green-haired teen continued his silent walk, he was suddenly pulled from his thoughts from loud shouting. Glancing to his left, Izuku could see that a group of children, who looked to be in their first years in middle school, were crowded around something. Squinting his eyes, the teen could see that it was an object but rather another person. Dark gray, rubber-like material made up the downed kid's skin. Coupled with the pointed snout and fins on their arms, Izuku figured their quirk was aquatic-related. It also didn't take a genius to guess why said child was currently curled in on himself while the others circled around with mocking grins. Hey, look guys, the freak is crying. With a quirk like that, who wouldn't? Yeah, I doubt even his mother loves him. I overheard he wants to be a hero. Ha, with a quirk like that he'd be better off quirkless. Yeah, better useless than a monster. This wasn't the first instance of quirk bullying that Izuku had come across and undoubtedly wouldn't be the last. Yet, there was something within the group of pre-teens' words that sparked a fire within Izuku's green eyes. Those words, he could see how deeply they were cutting into the mutant quirk user. The hollow, almost dead look in their eyes was something the angel could spot from a mile away. Before he could even think, Izuku's body started to move on its own, striding towards the group of children with a clear purpose. I won't let someone else make the same mistake I almost did. The greenette thought to himself as he approached the scene. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Izuku called out with a frown on his face. Almost instantly the group of bullies stiffened, snapping toward Izuku so quickly he was surprised they didn't get whiplash. The teen held his stern gaze, picking up on the nonverbal cues of the middle schoolers. They didn't seem to recognize Izuku based on their deer-in-the-headlights look on their faces. The greenette fully intended to use this to his advantage. With the image of Deku absent, he could make a real impression. "And nothin'. Just hanging with our friend." One stuttered out the excuse pathetically. "Yeah, we're just joking around." Yeah, it's all jokes, isn't it?" Another agreed hastily before sending a pointed look toward their victim, almost daring them to speak up unless they wished to receive far worse than jeers. "I'm not blind nor deaf, I clearly saw what you were doing to them." Izuku bluntly shut down their weak attempts. "I have half a mind to drag each and every one of you by your ear to your parents so that they can punish you for this." The green-eyed glare sent towards the younger students made them flinch. "However, because I'm in a hurry, I'll let you all off with a warning this time. Go home and don't pick on him ever again." "Yeah, we'll never pick on him again. We learned our lesson." For a moment Izuku considered their half-hearted apologies acceptable. However, for the briefest instant he was reminded of those very same words. Except they were being said by the quirkless boy's tormentors rather than the ones that stood before him. How many times have such words been uttered, only for them to be forgotten the very next day? With a hardened look, the greenette knew what he needed to do. "Do not mistake my kindness for weakness. If I ever see any of you bullying anyone again, you won't be getting off so lightly again." The angel's voice was like that of steel as he spoke sternly. He knew that the second they could, these kids would do it again. Best to make sure they really understand that their actions were wrong. If a hero were here right now, they'd be beyond disappointed in you all. Picking on someone because of their quirk, what a villainous thing to do. Like that, Izuku could see his words had really struck the group of pre-teens close to home. They gained remorseful expressions, eyes filled with mourning regret. Their postures matched their expressions, becoming dejected as they sluggishly walked away. Truth be told, the angel did not expect his words to have that much of an effect. Maybe he was so used to his attempts at intervening failing that seeing something actually was that surprising. "Hey, are you okay?" When the bullies had disappeared from view, Izuku crouched down to the mutant student. "Yeah, I'm fine." The child sniffed loudly, wiping his eyes hastily with the back of his sleeve. "Forgive me, I know we just met, but you look anything but fine." Izuku could easily see through the thin facade. "It's nothing, just," he took a shuddering breath before continuing in a low whisper. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I can't be a hero, who would want a monster to save them. I understand it may feel that way, trust me, I've been in your situation before." The greenette began in a soft, sympathetic tone. "But even if the people around try to put you down and tell you can't do it, you have to push forward and keep trying. Because there are people out there who would love to see you as a pro-hero." "I guess," the preteen replied back, clearly unconvinced. "If you don't mind me asking, what's your quirk?" Izuku suddenly asked. "It's called Shark, I have the same features like that of a great white," he replied, giving the older boy a confused look. "How does that make a difference?" "Well, if you have the same features as a shark, then I bet you're great at swimming and can probably breathe underwater, right?" When he received a nod, the middle schooler continued. "Well, water-based heroes are hard to come by, especially those with as much flexibility as yours." Izuku gave the mutant quirk user a grin. "I bet with your quirk you could save countless lives with just those two things alone. Imagine what else you could do with something like your sense of smell." "Yeah, I guess I could." The dullness within the boy's eyes faded, replaced by a growing brightness. I bet once you become a pro-hero you'll be as cool as Selkie or even Gang Orca." Izuku pushed further. "Oh my god, you know Gang Orca too. He's my favorite." A beaming smile was sent towards the greenette at the mention of the pro-hero. "Yeah, I do, he's one of my favorite mutant heroes." The angel nodded with a smile. "It always makes me annoyed whenever he's described as looking villainous." "I know, right? It's so unfair, he can't control how his quirk affects his appearance." The other boy nodded in agreement. "Besides, he looks so cool. Kinda like you, right?" Izuku added with a soft voice. "It's not fair that you get called a monster just because of your quirk." A small grin was given as he continued. "Plus, I think your quirk makes you look cool." Thanks, no one's ever said that to me before." was the almost inaudible reply. I'm sure Gang Orca would agree if he were here now. Izuku stood up and held out his hand for the boy to take. Let's become pro-heroes so we can ask him together. For a moment the boy remained frozen on the ground, staring up at Izuku with wide unblinking eyes. After a few moments a large, sharp-toothed smile etched itself across the quirk user's face. Eagerly a gray hand reached and grabbed Izuku's pale one, allowing the owner of the former to be pulled up from the ground. Yeah, just you wait, I'll become a great pro-hero just like Gang Orca. The boy promised with a bright grin. I'll be there cheering you on the entire way. The greenette grinned back, letting go of the pre-teen's hand. I hope we meet again. Izuku trailed off, realizing he never got the boy's name. Umi Satoru Umi. Satoru answered the unspoken question. Midoriya Izuku, I hope I'll see you sooner rather than later, Umi-san. Izuku introduced himself before continuing his walk toward the park. You too, Midoriya-samai, you're my hero. Satoru called back at the retreating form of the greenette. While Izuku did not respond verbally, he could feel his lips curl upward and a comfortable warmth fill his chest. If he were to be as technical as possible, the angel could see how his actions may come off heroic. Yet, in Izuku's mind he merely saw his intervention as a necessity more so than anything else. Still, he couldn't deny that it felt nice to be given such thanks even if it was for something as simple as scolding a group of bullies. The interaction left Izuku in a positive mood, the smile on his face never fading from his lips. On top of that, the angel could practically feel his spirit soar to new heights. Never before had he felt so motivated in his life. Izuku always looked forward to his training with Gabriel, but right now the Archangel couldn't summon him sooner. Every minute that ticked back felt like time was stretching on but making no real progress for the young angel. Thankfully, his prayers were answered after what felt like eternity, which happened to be only 5 minutes, as the expected golden glow surrounded his form. Now standing on the control deck of the cyber grind, Izuku immediately tossed his backpack to the side. If he had any less control of himself, he might have immediately jumped into the arena without a second thought. However, his desire to greet and speak with his master overridden his urge to jump directly into today's training. Hello, Mr. Gabriel. Izuku greeted as he made his way over to his fellow angel. Izuku. The armored warrior nodded back before turning his attention back to the control panel. Are you prepared for today's lesson? Yes, sir. The greenette responded back enthusiastically. Excellent. Your style of combat has improved significantly over these past few months. Gabriel noted while fiddling with the sliders on the screen in front of him. Today I want you to work on your management of the battlefield. More often than not the machines will have every area covered. What do you mean, sir? Izuku asked. You've taken note of the strengths and weaknesses of the machines, yes. When the green-haired teen nodded, the Archangel continued. I've taken the liberty of having most of your battles having at least one area left open for you to exploit. Like street cleaners and specters are often together. Izuku inquired, beginning to understand what his mentor was referring to. Precisely, my pupil. Both are extraordinarily lethal in close to medium range but lack anything for long-range combat. Gabriel praised with an approving nod. So today I'll have to deal with close, medium, and long-range machines all at once. The smaller angel concluded. Indeed, today we'll test everything I have taught you about fighting. The Archangel confirmed plainly. Remember, if you find yourself on the defensive, Gabriel trailed off, looking at his student expectantly. Then I'm already losing the battle. I remember, sir, speed, aggression, and quick thinking. Izuku finished clearly. Then shall we begin? Gabriel rhetorically asked, grinning proudly behind his helmet. With a swift bow of his head, Izuku's wings burst from his back, allowing him to float down onto the gray platform below. Instantly the ground began to shift, blocks shifting to form the walls, stairways, and towards that the greenette had grown accustomed to. Soon after, the familiar several beams of blue light scattered across the arena appeared. The expected ensemble of machines materialized, a healthy mix between street cleaners, drones, specters, and tethers. However, standing on top of the several towers that were erected was a machine that Izuku was unfamiliar with. It was green and gray in color with pink lights and a similarly colored single eye. Its body was similar to that of Spectre's, albeit slightly skinnier. The legs of the robot reminded Izuku of a dinosaur, with 3 front sharp claws and 1 on the back of its foot. The machine's head was also irregular, taking on the appearance of a sniper rifle. A large gray magazine could be seen sticking out from the top of its barrel-shaped head. Knowing better than to dwell on his confusion at the new adversary, Izuku sprang into action. Using his wings to propel himself forward towards a lone street cleaner, the teen nimbly dodged the jet of flames that were sent his way. Twisting midair, he shoulder bashed the robot in its metallic chest, sending it crashing into a wall with a loud thud. Raising his fist to crush its head, Izuku was about to deliver the final blow before being forced to a set of orange projectiles. The 3 drones had occupied the air evenly while still maintaining sight with the young angel. Izuku made an attempt to snatch one out of the sky but was unfortunately forced to evade 2 thick cables shot out by the tethers. The evasion didn't stop there as the new machine had dug his claws into the ground and crouched down, aiming its barrel at the greenette. A pink laser followed the angel with inhuman accuracy. Then, like lightning, a large caliber bullet shot out towards its airborne target. So, it's like a sniper, Izuku noted as he allowed himself to fall onto the ground with a grunt, dodging the projectile. Mr. Gabriel was right, they have every area covered. Dashing to the side to avoid the specter that attempted to tackle him, the angel burst into the air once more when he saw the approaching street cleaners. For some moments Izuku continued to dodge and weave, observing the patterns of his opponents with a critical eye. He noted that the sniper machine and the tethers required a recharge of sorts before they could fire again. I got it now, the teen thought confidently, ready to put his plan into motion. Flying high so he had the attention of the tethers and sniper, Izuku waited until one of the 3 made their move. The gunhead machine happened to be the first, directing another shot towards the floating boy. Swiftly moving to the side to avoid the bullet, wind blasted against Izuku's face as he sped over to the reloading robot. Carefully dodging the projectiles from the drones and tethers as he did. With a great amount of force, the middle schooler grabbed the barrel with his hands, bending it with all his might. Like a twig the metal snapped in 2, rendering the function of the machine useless. Flipping over the edge of the tower, Izuku could feel the shots from the drones whiz past his body and hit their fellow comrade. Then using the wall of the tower as a springboard, Izuku avoided the subsequent explosion that followed. However, the move also allowed for the boy to build up momentum. Now with significantly more speed, Izuku became a green blur as he shot towards one of the 2 tethers. The machine didn't have the chance to even attempt to restrain Izuku before its head was punched off its body. With its target now in sight, the remaining tether shot out its claw towards the teen. Such action proved to work against it as Izuku easily caught the cable before hardly pulling the machine toward him. Yeah, I think it's big enough. The angel flew forward, meeting the fast-approaching machine halfway and seizing it from the air. Holding the metal body in front of him, Izuku flew towards the group of drones, using the tether bodies as a makeshift shield. Projectile after projectile was fired, but none ever came close to striking Izuku. Each orange orb chipped away at the metallic body of the helpless tether before its green light faded. Ha! Nice try, the angel taunted, tossing the body of the inactive tether once he was close enough to the drones. Predictably the small purple machines easily dodged the makeshift missile, however Izuku was more than counting on this. Calculating where the closest would move to the middle schooler reared his arm back. When said drone moved to the location it had no time to register the closeness of its enemy before a pale fist tore through its pink eye. With the drone still in his hand, Izuku threw its body towards the next machine, repeating the process that he used to dismantle the first. Once he snatched the last drone out of the sky, the greenette looked down, seeing the street cleaners had gathered underneath him. Take this, Izuku shouted, launching the purple body towards the group. Of the 5 that had made up the cluster of machines, only one had the wherewithal to dash backwards. The other four, however, remained stubbornly rooted to the ground, even as the body of the drone shot towards them. Upon clashing with the gray floor, a large explosion sent an array of metal, springs, and wires through the air. Now to finish this, the teen thought with a look of pure resolution. Using his angelic speed, Izuku zipped towards the last street cleaner, grabbing its metal head and slamming it on its back. Continuing with his airborne momentum, Izuku dragged the machine across the ground as he flew at inhuman speeds, only letting go when the angular-shaped head had been grinded to the point where it almost didn't exist. Hearing the last machine rapidly approaching from his back, the teen quickly turned around and threw the body of the street cleaner. Unfortunately, the specter seemed to have anticipated this move as it expertly slid underneath the body. However, before it could properly stand up, it was tackled by Izuku, who saw the brief moment of weakness. With his speed and strength, the greenette slammed the body of the specter into the adjacent wall. As soon as Izuku released his hold, the red-eyed machine sent a haymaker towards Izuku's face. The strike was blocked with the angel's forearm before he delivered his own counterpunch in return. Being far faster than it, Izuku's fist slammed into the robot's head before it could defend itself. With his opponent momentarily stunned, Izuku continued the assault, sending several more punches to its face and chassis. Giving one last cry, Izuku finished his attack with a devastating uppercut, separating the head of the specter from its body and sending it straight into the air. A few deep breaths were all Izuku was able to take before the arena began to shift once more, but that was all he needed. I will become a great hero. Nothing will stop me, he thought to himself resolutely and with a determined look. As the greenette continued to fight round after round, Gabriel watched his pupil with intrigue hidden behind his helmet. He knew how much of a hard worker Izuku was, but something was different about his attitude today. The boy was fighting hard, harder than the armored warrior had seen from their time together. It was as though he was doing it in order to impress someone or perhaps prove something. Just what are you trying to prove, Izuku? Gabriel wondered, watching his student destroy the machines with ferocity. The Archangel remained passive for the remainder of the day's session, observing Izuku with a clinical gaze. Once the last machine had been turned to scrap, the older angel waited patiently for his pupil to fly back up to the control deck. He watched silently for a moment, allowing Izuku to catch his breath before approaching him. Well done, my student, your performance today exceeded my expectations, Gabriel praised with his metallic voice. Thank you, sir, Izuku acknowledged after taking a few calming breaths. Though I must admit, I am rather curious, you seem rather motivated today. The Archangel bluntly began. Not that there is anything wrong with that, mind you, I merely wish to understand why. Hey, was I that obvious? Izuku chuckled awkwardly, while rubbing the back of his head. Indeed, if you trained this hard every day, I would have had you on the front lines already. Gabriel confirmed with a bob his head. It's just, you remember when we first met, and I talked about being a hero. Izuku waited until he received a nod before continuing. Well, the entrance exam for the hero school is coming up in a few days. And I just really want to make sure I'm ready for it. Putting aside the clear fact that you are ready, you insist on pursuing this hero path of yours. Gabriel hummed thoughtfully as he proposed his question. Is being the warrior of God not enough for you? The older angel playfully asked. No. Trust me, I'm really thankful for these powers and having you as a mentor. Izuku stumbled over himself. I'm more than happy to keep up my training. I jest, Izuku. Gabriel rolled his eyes from the frantic look in his student's eyes. Yeah right. It's just I've dreamt of being a hero since I was 4. The teen revealed, voicing becoming soft. Saving people, making sure the innocent feel protected, making people smile just because I'm there, it's all I ever wanted to do. You can do such things as a soldier of heaven. The Archangel pointed out, though not unkindly. I mean yeah, but I don't know, Izuku struggled while ducking his head. Unable to understand the confusing set of thoughts that swirled within his head. I have to do this, I just have to. Gabriel mused, beginning to see glimpses of Izuku's hidden motivations underneath his carefully crafted wall. Though for his pupil's sake the angel chose not to make a comment about what he thought. It will be a hard path. Gabriel plainly admitted, wanting his student to understand the weight of what he was planning to do. I will walk it all the same. Izuku raised his gaze to his mentors. You might not get to experience the luxuries of youth. If it means I'll get stronger, then it will be a worthy sacrifice. Your social life will likely become non-existent. I don't have many friends anyway. You will be forced to carry many burdens. Gabriel said somberly. You may be forced to bear the weight of the world on your back. Then I'll carry them even if my legs and arms give out. Izuku resolutely replied, eyes ablaze with determination. Someone has to so others can live peaceful lives. Very well. Gabriel responded in an indescribable tone. As your mentor, you have my full support to pursue your dream of becoming a hero. Don't think for a second that means I'll take it easy on you when you get accepted. I would be worried if you didn't, sir. The younger angel beamed, his heart racing with excitement. But how are you so sure I'll pass the exam? You're my student, of course you'll succeed. Gabriel pridefully scoffed at the mere suggestion otherwise. But if you think you're not, I shall remedy that. I really don't like the sound of that. Izuku's sweat dropped, envisioning the evil smile on his mentor's face. Consider it a final test before your exam. The archangel cryptically explained, the golden aura surrounding Izuku before he could question further. Be prepared, Izuku, for tomorrow shall test you greatly. As quick as snapping one's fingers, Izuku disappeared from the monochrome palette of the cyber grind. Now back in the park, Izuku gave a brief stretch, feeling the effects of the day's battles finally catching up to him. With his joints now loosened, the teen picked up his bag and began his trek home. His mind ran wild with thoughts of just what exactly Gabriel had in store for him tomorrow. Today had already pushed Izuku to his limit, so there was no possible way that the next day could possibly be worse. Right. Day before the entrance exam. Izuku was nervous, more so than usual, as he packed his things and made his way out of his homeroom. The greenette was eternally thankful that he didn't require sleep, or else last night would have been a tough one. For the entire night, Izuku laid motionless in his bed, staring up at his ceiling with a blank expression. His hand ran through the many potential scenarios that Gabriel could use to test him. Everything from fighting 100 machines to battling his master himself were considered. Nothing was off the table in Izuku's mind. The thoughts persisted throughout the school day as well, making Izuku hyper-aware of how slowly time was moving. Even as said teen exited the school grounds, each minute spent walking towards the park felt agonizingly long. Perhaps it was his nerves, but Izuku desperately sought to take Gabriel's test already. Each passing second that Izuku wasn't in the arena of the cyber grind made him all the more worried. What if he failed? Would Gabriel retract his blessings? Would he stop mentoring Izuku completely? Worst of all, if he failed, would that mean he wasn't ready for the entrance exam? Calm down, you're overthinking again. Izuku scolded himself. Mr. Gabri's test will be hard but fair. I just need to go beyond plus ultra if I want to succeed. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, the butterflies in the middle schooler's stomach lessened somewhat. Pulling notebook from his bag, Izuku began doodling hero costume ideas that he had for himself. The distraction seemed to have worked, as the teen found himself engrossed in his task that his nerves all but disappeared. He was only broken from his concentration when his body filled with the comforting warmth. In the blink of an eye, Izuku vanished from his world once more. Appearing in the cyber grind, Izuku could see Gabriel standing at the edge of the platform, arms crossed as he stared down at the arena. Usually, the man was hunched over the machine adjusting the settings of the cyber grind. Seeing him standing expectantly likely meant that everything was already set up for the greenette. Are you prepared for your test, Izuku? Gabriel asked without turning to address his fellow angel. As ready as I'll ever be, sir. Izuku honestly answered, dropping his bag and moving to stand next to his mentor. Then go forth and claim victory. Gabriel nodded towards the arena. Show me how far you have come, my pupil. With a nod of his own, Izuku reluctantly descended onto the large platform below, fingers twitching in anticipation. The cubes began to move, however rather than create one of the many complex layouts the arena was extraordinarily simple. The ground remained flat with not a single bump in sight. The only notable feature of the arena was the large walls that had been erected, which couldn't have been more than 2 stories tall. Izuku expected many beams of light to suddenly appear, filling the empty landscape with numerous machines. However, to him he was merely met with a single, large ball of light that appeared a few feet away from Izuku. The greenette was momentarily stunned by the appearance of the machine, its visage being the most imposing by far. It was tall, almost twice as tall as Izuku himself, with a long rectangular head attached to its bulky body. A set of mismatched aqua-blue eyes were positioned towards the top of its head, a similarly colored light in its chest. Its yellow and black color scheme reminded the greenette of a hazard, which was an applicable way to describe the machine. Its right arm, which was that of a shotgun with 2 barrels, hung limply at its side. In its left hand was a large, intimidating sword with rotating serrated edges like that of chainsaw. "This is your test, Izuku, the sword machine," Gabriel revealed as the machine phased into existence. "Rip it to pieces," the Archangel commanded with a tone of pure steel. With the invisible bell being rung, the sword machine darted forward, far faster than anything Izuku had seen from a machine. Its left arm swung in a wide overhead arc as it leapt forward, sword threatening to split the teen in half. Using his enhanced reflexes, the greenette dashed to the side avoiding the strike. However, he was caught off guard when the machine swiftly turned around, slashing horizontally. "Gah!" Izuku screamed in pain as the blade cut across his chest. The force of the blow sent the middle schooler backward, tumbling across the ground briefly before righting himself with the help of his wings. He had time to catch his breath as the sword machine was already making its way towards him. Its shotgun arm raised as several pellets were fired in Izuku's direction. Despite the pain, the greenette was able to dodge the barrage. This time he managed to anticipate the follow-up sword strike, ducking underneath the machine's swing. Propelling himself upward with the help of his wings and the floor, Izuku delivered a swift uppercut to the robot's head. The strike stunned it long enough for the teen to follow up with a flying drop kick to its chassis. The machine was sent skidding across the ground, forced to use its sword to maintain balance by digging it into the ground. Its idle state did not remain for long as the second it came to a stop the shotgun arm was raised once more. Tch. Grunting, Izuku's ethereal wings flapped powerfully, sending him several feet into the sky and avoiding the shotgun pellets. The height advantage didn't last long as the sword machine leapt from the ground towards the floating angel. Its left arm raised once more as it attempted another overhead arc, though like last time it was avoided. Seeing how it couldn't follow up due to being in the air, Izuku took the opportunity to grab its sword arm as it passed by. Flying up higher, the angel spun the robot upward before ferociously throwing it back toward the ground. Unable to right itself in time, the machine crashed into the gray floor on its back. A low, metallic grunt of its own could be heard when it made impact. "Now's my chance." Izuku quickly descended toward his downed opponent. The angel landed roughly onto the robot's metal chest, resetting whatever progress it had made in getting up. Izuku leaned down and sent several hard punches into the machine's rectangular head. Now severely dazed, the sword machine could not stop the greenette from reaching down and grabbing its right arm. Gripping with every ounce of strength he had, Izuku pulled the limb, hearing the creaking of metal as he did so. The process was slow and likely painful for the machine, but after a few moments Izuku managed to tear the projectile-firing limb from its own. Unfortunately for the green-haired boy, he received a harsh kick to his already searing chest for his efforts. The blow sent the teen stumbling back, dropping the arm in favor of clutching his bleeding chest. Using its sword to help right itself, the sword machine returned to being back on its feet. With inhuman disregard for its loss of limb, the robot charged forward, swinging its blade in combination of wide overhead arcs and swift horizontal strikes. Izuku managed to dodge the first few, but the relenting attack proved to be too much for the green-eyed teen. Several shallow cuts appeared across his body, mostly on his arms and abdomen. Enraged by both the pain he was feeling and the relentlessness of his attacker, Izuku began to deliver his own blows in retaliation. For every slash made against him, Izuku made sure to return the same sentiment right back at the sword machine twice-fold. The effects of which were obvious from how damaged its head and body began to look. Seeing how its opponent was far faster than it, the sword machine reared its remaining arm back before throwing its sword. The blade began to spiral around its owner, forcing Izuku to reluctantly use his wings to back away from the whirlwind of pain. With its target now sufficiently away, the large robot pulled its arm back before tossing its sword straight towards Izuku. The speeding blade nearly impaled the teen if not for his angelic reflexes kicking in. Harmlessly the sword was embedded into the wall, leaving the machine without its weapon. With no other choice than to push forward and retrieve its blade, the sword machine rushed forward in a great show of speed. Yet, Izuku was far faster, reaching the sword and pulling it out of the wall with a grunt. Lacking the human desire for self-preservation, the sword machine continued its charge. Intending to either rip its blade from Izuku's hands or beating said teen down with its one arm. Whatever plan it may have had would never come to fruition as Izuku dashed forward with the help of his wings, sword held high. Flesh and metal met in one final clash, but it was the former that came out on top. With a guttural yell, Izuku stabbed the sharp blade directly through the sword machine's chest. Metal tore through metal as the machine was forced to its knees as the teen drove the weapon deeper into its chassis. Using his remaining strength, Izuku lifted the sword upward, cleaving the machine in two from the bottom up. The two pieces of the sword machine fell to the floor unceremoniously. Ha, ha, Izuku panted, dropping the blade on the ground with a loud thud. Turning to look at his mentor, the greenette stood straight before shouting. So, you did I pass? He he he, ha ha ha. Gabriel's chuckles echoed throughout the chamber. The archangel held his arms wide with his own wings sprouting from his back. I think you were more than prepared, my student. Despite the mounting pain in his body, Izuku couldn't fight the triumphant grin that appeared on his face. You have your phone right? Inko Midoriya asked her son with clear worry on her face. Yes mom, said son answered back with a nod. He was currently dressed in his middle school uniform with his backpack pulled over his shoulders. The teen had only managed to place his hand on the door handle before his mother began to fret over him. And your lunch, the form said that you'll be there for a few hours at least. She continued without skipping a beat. Yes, I have that too. The urge to roll his eyes was very tempting, but Izuku couldn't exactly blame Inko for her current attitude. After all, today was the day of the entrance exam, something that Izuku himself had worried over numerous times. And in your water right. I don't want you to get dehydrated. Inko breathlessly kept at it until her son decided to put her worries to rest. Mom, I'm okay. Izuku firmly but kindly said to the frantic woman, his hands placed comfortingly on her shoulders. I'm ready. He gave her a gentle squeeze with an encouraging bright smile. Right, I know it's just. Inko's body visibly sagged, her eyes welling up with held-back tears. I'm so proud of you, Izuku. And that I'm sorry, for what happened so long ago. I gave up when you never didn't. Mom. The green-haired teen interjected, staring at the woman with soft eyes. You don't need to apologize for that, I understand. You were just trying to look out for me, I cannot fault you for that. But I still should have believed in you, believed in your dream. The matriarch desperately tried to counter. Almost as though she was looking for some justification for her son to be upset with her. And you do now, that is more than enough for me. Izuku gave a reassuring smile before letting go and opening the door. I'll be back soon. Izuku. Inko called out just as the teen stepped foot into the outside world. Stopping, he turned back to look back at his mother in curiosity. I love you, I know you'll do great out there. She gave a watery smile and a shaky thumbs up. Don't worry, I'll go beyond plus ultra. Izuku promised back, reciprocating the gesture with confidence. Love you too, see you later. The door clicked shut, allowing for Inko to let her tears all freely onto the floor below. With Izuku. The walk to the train station was rather uneventful, as was the train ride itself despite the usual crampedness of the cars. A fact that would usually cause the Greenette great discomfort, yet he found himself oddly indifferent. Then again, the video he was currently watching on his phone was really entertaining. Izuku really liked Kamui Woods but even couldn't deny seeing his gobsmacked expression when Mt. Lady showed up was hilarious no matter how many times he watched it. Video after video helped pass the ride, and in time Izuku found himself stepping off the platform and approaching the gates of UA amongst a sea of other applicants. However, the teen's gaze was immediately drawn to the H-shaped building. The videos and pictures online did not do the school justice. UA was awe-inspiring to say the least. It was easily the largest and most impressive school Izuku had ever laid eyes on. I can see why UA is the #1 heroic school. The Greenette thought to himself, feeling a little intimidated by the sheer size and scale. Stepping through the gate, the building only seemed to grow in size, like standing at the bottom of a mountain. Other applicants and students with a variety of quirks continued down the stone walkway, some chatting excitedly about the upcoming exam. Yet for a moment the angel simply stood in the middle of the path leading towards the front doors to the school. A whirlwind of thoughts passing through his mind as fully registered where he was. I can't believe it, I'm actually here. It feels so surreal. Izuku couldn't describe the strange feeling that blossomed in his chest. After all these years. Are you unwell? A stoic voice from behind Izuku snapped him out of his thoughts. Glancing to his side, he could see another applicant, though much shorter than himself, standing with an indifferent expression. The teen wore a uniform similar to Izuku's, though the colors were completely different, along with a red choker around his neck. His head was like that of a bird with dark black feathers, at least Izuku assumed they were feathers, and a sharp hooked yellow beak. The angel couldn't quite place it, but something was off about the other boy's vibe. The piercing red eyes staring back into his green ones certainly didn't help. If you are, perhaps it would be better for you to leave. The examinee continued before Izuku could respond. There is no shame in admitting one's shortcomings. He bluntly but not unkindly added. Ah, sorry, I was caught up in my mind for a moment there, Izuku answered with a sheepish smile. I appreciate your concern, but I'm more than ready to face the exam. Forgive me my interruption then, I understand that conversing with the mind is a necessity. The bird-headed boy bowed apologetically. Yeah. The Greenette blinked, unsure of what to make of the other applicant's words. I'm Midoriya, by the way, Midoriya Izuku. He reached his pale hand out. Tokiyami Fumikage at your service. The teen accepted the gesture with a firm shake, and this is my quirk, Dark Shadow. From his back a shadowy figure that looked similar to Tokiyami, only with sharp yellow eyes, emerged. Gah, too bright, too bright. As quickly as the figure came, it disappeared with a pained cry. He doesn't like the light. Tokiyami said plainly. Ha, you don't say. Izuku's sweat dropped, not expecting such a dramatic reaction. Anyway, it's nice to meet you both. You're here for the entrance exam too. It was a dumb question, but the teen wanted to be polite regardless. Indeed, we have traveled from Hamamatsu in order to partake in this test. The quirk user revealed with a nod. Cool. I'm from the middle of Musutafu, so I bet your train ride here was a lot longer than mine. Izuku replied back while the two resumed their walk toward the auditorium. Time that was spent well enough since I was out of the sun for the majority of it. Tokiyami said with a hum. I'm guessing your quirk is based off shadows or something like that. The angel asked curiously. Correct, Dark Shadow is most powerful the more light is absent. Tokiyami confirmed, though he does become harder to control the more darkness that surrounds us. That's a pretty powerful quirk, even with its limitations. Izuku couldn't help but praise. All you have to do is stick to the shadows and I'm sure you'll breeze through the practical portion. Of that I am also certain, yet the same cannot be said for the written exam. The shadow user let out a dramatic sigh. I admit, academics are not my strongest compared to my other peers. I'm sure you'll do great. The teen gave an encouraging smile. We may have just met, but I can tell you have a good head on your shoulders. Your kindness warms my blackened heart if only slightly. Tokiyami replied with a notable upward curve of his beak. Before Izuku could so much as utter a word, his shoulder was suddenly roughly bumped by a passing Bakugo. Out of the fucking way, nerd. The explosive blonde seethed with anger. I don't fucking get why you're here, useless fuck. Was the only comment before he stormed off into the building, hands shoved deep within his pockets. You know him? Tokiyami asked after witnessing the interaction. He was a friend. Izuku corrected himself quickly, now wearing a neutral expression. Perhaps it is for the best if we make our way to the testing hall now. The other examinee suggested. Though Tokiyami wanted to say more, he remained silent for the time being. Together the two teens followed the signs leading them to a large auditorium that had hundreds of seats that were nearly all filled. Following the information given to them on their temporary IDs, Izuku and Tokiyami went their separate ways. The former ended up almost in the middle while the latter was stationed somewhere to the far right. Plopping down into his seat, a small sigh of relief escaped Izuku's mouth when he saw Bakugo was a few rows down from where he was. Quietly, the greenette placed his bag on the ground, folding his arms across his chest as he waited. Out of boredom, the angel began to survey the other students who were currently waiting for the exam to begin. Some were chatting with their neighbors while others kept to themselves silently. Doing a once-over, Izuku scanned the rows of students, finding a pink-skinned, talkative girl, a boy with multiple arms, and a green-haired girl to be some of the few standouts. The teens people watching came to an end soon when the lights of the auditorium dimmed except for the spotlight on the center stage. The chatter instantly died down, the attention of everyone focusing on the rising platform. Standing at the edge of the platform, wearing his ever-present grin and his long hair pointing towards the sky, was none other than Present Mike. Izuku could feel his inner fanboy briefly trying to claw its way out, but he managed to push down his giddiness. Hey everybody, and welcome to today's show. The man energetically shouted. Wow, we've got a full house today. Come on and make some noise. Quote. Not a single sound was made in the auditorium, save for some awkward coughing. Yesh, tough crowd The DJ continued without hesitation. How can he possibly handle himself that well? Izuku thought, utterly impressed by the pro-hero's ability to keep his energetic vibe going. Alright, you're here for the entrance exam, not a live performance, I dig it. Present Mike gave a thumbs up. Before we start the written portion, I'm gonna give you listeners a rundown of the practical real quick. The large screen behind him lighting up as he spoke. A large rectangular box could be seen with the words, "You are here," written in the center. Several other smaller squares were connected with a letter in each box going from A to G. Izuku let out a sigh of relief when he spied Bakugo had an A on his ID while Izuku had a F. The test is simple as can be. You'll head to your designated testing site where you'll have 10 minutes to partake in a mock battle. Present Mike began with a grin. The goal is to earn villain points by taking out as many villains as you can. The screen behind him shifted to show the silhouette of 4 robots, each one had a number along with the letter P next to it. Each villain is worth a set amount of points, but the more they're worth the tougher they'll be. So be sure to use those flashy quirks of yours to take them out. But what about those who don't have powerful quirks? Izuku could feel his lips tug downward. The practical seems skewed in favor of quirks that allow for brute force. The teen had no time to dwell on the matter before the voice of an applicant to his right suddenly came forth. I have a question, sir. A boy with square glasses and a neat haircut sharply raised his hand in the air. Yeah, examinee 132 shoot. The pro-hero paused before waving for the teen to continue. You say 3 villains, but the screen clearly shows 4. The boy adjusted his glasses while sweeping his arm dramatically around. It is unbecoming of the most prestigious heroics school to forget such an important detail in their presentation. Alright, you got me there, nice catch little listener. The hero placatingly put his hands in the air, the screen enhancing on the outline that had 0p next to it. The 4th type of villain is an obstacle more than anything else. It's worth 0 points, so unless you got a quirk like All Might and time to kill, it's better to just avoid the thing altogether. Thank you for the correction and I apologize for interrupting. The teen bowed his head. Well, with that out of that way, I think it's time we turn up the bass. Yeah, Present Mike grinned, holding a raised fist in the air. Get out and do your best. Go beyond plus ultra. Testing Site F. Somehow the bus ride that Izuku took felt far longer than the written exam itself. Sure, the greenette may have breezed through the questions with ease, but he still took his time double-checking his answers. Yet, the less than 10-minute ride towards the battleground felt like an eternity to Izuku. It probably didn't help that Tokiyami was not with him, leaving the angel to quietly sit next to a blonde boy with a handsome face. Once they arrived, the group of examinees stepped off the vehicle, congregating in front of the entrance to the large fake city. Izuku expected the arena to be significantly smaller, considering that there were 6 others along with this one. Yet, the arena was easily the size of a large city, complete with tall buildings and taller walls surrounding the whole place. Despite only standing at the entrance, Izuku could clearly tell that he was only witnessing a small portion. Seriously, how much money do they have? Izuku thought in complete bafflement. This place could easily hold a few thousand people at least. Shaking his head to snap out of his thoughts, the angel made his way over to the other participants. Some had started to chat with one another while others focused on preparing for the battle ahead by loosening up their joints. Izuku recognized the pink-skinned and green-haired girls from the auditorium, though upon closer inspection the latter's locks were actually vines. He could even see the same student who interrupted Present Mike earlier. Said teen was currently scolding the pink-haired girl for unhero-like behavior, whatever that meant. Looking for some quiet, Izuku moved to stand next to the vine-haired girl, who currently had her hands clasped together with her head bowed. With his superior hearing, the angel could hear that she was in fact praying. Though he tried to, Izuku couldn't help but let out a small snort at the irony of her actions. The girl opened her eyes at the sound, turning to stare at Izuku. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Izuku's face tinged red as he sheepishly looked away. I just thought of something funny to myself. It is of no concern. I have said my piece with God, now I merely must pray his judgment favors me this day. The girl said with a soft voice. Shall I say a prayer for you too? She offered kindly. You don't have to do that. The greenette answered with a smile. But thank you, I appreciate the sentiment. As you wish. The girl held out her hand. Shiozaki Abara at your service. Midoriya Izuku, pleasure to meet you Shiozaki. Izuku accepted the hand with a firm shake of his own. They really went all out for this exam, huh? Indeed, yet we shall endure whatever thorns await us on this path. Abara replied, clasping her hands together once more. The Father's light shall guide us to our destiny. Hey listeners, are you ready? The voice of Present Mike coming from one of the large walls caught the attention of everyone present. Yeah, I can see that. Izuku's lips twitched slightly. Good luck out there. May the Father bless you, Midoriya. The vine-head girl nodded back. Yeah, alright, let's go. Whether it be Gabriel's training style or Izuku's own inability to control himself, the greenette could feel his ethereal wings and halo blossom from his back. Without even waiting to see if there was a countdown, he zoomed forward in a green blur. In a matter of seconds, Izuku was met with a one-pointer in his path, its red eyes gleaming menacingly. Yet, it could not stop the angel from twisting in the air and chopping its head clean off his body. Before the hunk of metal could even hit the pavement, the winged teen was gone, racing down the street in a great show of speed. The other examinees watched the scene in confusion, until Present Mike broke them from their stasis. What are you waiting for? He's got the right idea. There are no countdowns in real life, go go go. And like that, the other teen surged forward into the city. Observation deck. And that's the last of them. I think we're in for a very entertaining year. Present Mike boasted while stepping into the room. Speak for yourself, Hazashi, none of the brats are remotely appealing. The tired voice of Aizawa Shota replied back. The erasure hero curled up in his yellow sleeping bag while boredly looking at the large TV screen against the wall. I don't think I've ever seen anyone reach your absurd expectation, Shota. Pro Hero Midnight commented teasingly. Her legs crossed sensually as she looked up at the device with a quirked lip. I think we got quite a few beauties this year. The heroine licked her lips. Indeed, Ms. Kayama, so many delightful and interesting quirks this year. Principal, bear dog mouse thing, Nezu agreed with his usual weird smile. I'll say, Snipe muttered, watching a blonde examinee blow up several two-pointers. Come on Aizawa, you're telling me not one listener has caught your eye. Hazashi plopped down onto the couch next to Midnight. None that I'm not expecting to be in my class already. The baggy-eyed man said flatly. I think they just may surprise you. Nezu countered lightly, excitedly tapping his paws onto his desk. What do you think, Yagi? The other pro heroes in the room turned to stare at the skinny man who remained oddly quiet since the practical exam began. The number one hero looked startled as though he was caught dozing off in class. Letting out a grunt to clear his throat, All Might addressed the room with an awkward look. Ah, sorry Nezu. I was lost in my thoughts, what did you say? The skinny man answered sheepishly. Thinking about your new protégé, The creature ignored the man's question in favor of asking his own. Ah yes, sorry I'm still getting used to having Mirio as my successor. All Might admitted while rubbing the back of his head. Your mini-me can survive for a few hours without you. Aizawa drawled from his spot on the floor, earning a few snickers from the other heroes in the room. Focus on the brats on screen for now. AMRGH I suppose you have a point Aizawa. The hero choked on the air before swiftly composing himself. Anyone I should be paying close attention to? It's pretty obvious honestly. Smintas answered with a shrug. Bakugo Katsuki and Endeavor's kid are easily gonna be the top two. Isn't that the same kid you saved from that slime villain almost a year back? Nimari pointed out. He looks like a real hothead, those are almost the most fun to break. His temperament aside, the kid's got a powerful quirk. No denyin' that, the cowboy-themed hero reminded. While true it is not the quirk that only makes a hero. Nezu countered with a light smile. Shall we see who else has the spirit of a hero? Testing Site F. Izuku was stumped. Not because the villainous robots proved to be difficult mind you, the trail of scrap left behind proved that much. No, Izuku was stumped because he didn't know what else to do with the remaining 7 minutes he had. The Greenette expected a challenge, one that would push him to his limit in order to acquire victory. He expected these machines to come at him with the intensity of the ones that he battled numerous times in the cyber grind. Yet, these robots to put it bluntly were nothing more than walking annoyances more than anything else. They lacked the drive that Izuku was used to seeing, even the simple-minded drones proved to be more relentless. In a matter of seconds, the Angel could dismantle an entire group of the robots with minimal effort. A part of him even argued that he probably didn't even need his wings in order to take them down. His strength and speed alone easily tore apart their metal like it was wet paper. They didn't even have any tactics, simply charging forward with no thinking. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really expected better. Without looking, Izuku ducked under a swipe made by a three-pointer. He swiftly countered with a back kick to its metal center, splitting the machine in two and sending the top half flying into the side of a building. And that's 45 points. Floating up high in the air, Izuku surveyed his surroundings, green eyes scanning for any more robots to destroy. To his surprise, he was greeted to the aftermath of his efforts, several streets lined with broken metal bodies. From his position in the sky, Izuku could see that at least a fourth of the city no longer had any more robots. Something that surprised the Greenette greatly since he felt as though he had just started. Okay, I guess I'll go look for more then. The teen blinked, unsure of what to make of the fact that he alone took out a quarter of the total robots. With a powerful flap of his wings, Izuku glided through the city at a steady but controllable pace. He could see the other applicants dealing with their own robots. Some easily dismantled their metallic opponents while others struggled to even so much as scratch the villains. Stopping himself so he could survey the chaos below, Izuku watched the other examinees with a calculating gaze. His green orbs narrowed when he saw the pink-skinned girl had managed to find herself cornered between a two-pointer and a three-pointer. Without a second thought, blue wings flapped powerfully, sending the greenette flying towards the examinee with inhuman speed. Before either the robots or the girl could even register his existence, Izuku struck. Flying low, he braced himself using his shoulder as a makeshift battering ram to sweep the two-pointer from under its feet. Keeping his momentum, the teen did a mid-air flip to grab the back of the three-pointer. And with minimum effort, Izuku flipped the large hunk of metal on its back before shooting back into the sky. What the foo? The girl stared with wide, bewildered black eyes. What are you waiting for? They're down, take 'em out. Izuku called out from the air. Why yeah right. From her hands a stream of a thick liquid came forth, striking the downed robots and burning through the metallic chassis. Huh, an acid-based quirk. Very powerful, Izuku noted to himself, watching the liquid melt through the metal with ease. Thanks dude, I owe you one. The girl thanked with a large smile and a thumbs up. Izuku returned the gesture before taking off into the sky once more with a loud boom. I think I found out what to do with my spare time. The teen muttered to himself while flying through the city, his gaze searching for anyone else who looked as though they were in trouble. Observation deck. Hey guys, I think I found an interesting one. Present Mike said while grabbing the remote and flipping to the feed for testing Site F. Oh, Midoriya Izuku Nezu inquired curiously, the amalgamation of animals pulling up the boy's file on the side of the screen. His quirk is called Angel Smintos muttered while reading the information on screen. Seems pretty generic to me. But not ineffective, look. Vlad King grunted, motioning towards the zooming camera showcasing the pile of metal bodies. Kid's got some moves. Snipe whistled, clearly impressed. The feed played back a few moments of the teen's battle. And he's a cutie too. Midnight added with a grin. Look at him go, he's making them look like real bottoms. Apparently his quirk didn't manifest until 10 months ago. The principal of the school suddenly interjected. Wait really? The DJ looked over at his boss with a wide-eyed expression. The other heroes also wearing different levels of disbelief on their faces. That's what his records say. Nezu confirmed with an easy-going smile. Goddamn talk about late bloomer. Snipe muttered to himself. Full of surprises already. At this point we might just have to accept him on principle. Midnight grinned, some of the other pros agreeing with her. Something wrong, All Might? Smintos asked, seeing the smaller man with a perplexed look on his skeletal face. It's nothing, it's just, he seems familiar. Like I've met him before. The number one hero answered with a dismissive wave. You don't seem too shocked about the whole late quirk thing. The other hero said. Considering the nature of mine, gaining a quirk as late as this is not too outlandish. All Might replied back with a hum. Both heroes' attention was pulled back to the screen by Present Mike's commentary. We've got a real mother hen here. The man laughed, seeing the greenette save a pink-skinned girl. He leaned down to lightly jab Aizawa in the chest. Kinda takes after you Shota, you sure the kid isn't yours? We don't even remotely look the same. Eraserhead rolled his dry eyes at the joke. Coulda fooled us. Midnight joined in, watching as Izuku helped a blonde boy laser through 3 one-pointers. He's actually going out of his way to help the other examinees without stealing their points. Vlad King pointed out after observing the teen assist another applicant. Very noble of him. Geez, kid breaks down the bots in no time then decides he wants to help others rather than secure more points. Present Mike chuckled with a shake of his head. That kid is way too nice. I think we may have a third contender for first place, Bakugo, Todoroki, and now Midoriya. Nezu said cheerily. He's racking up rescue points very quickly. Perhaps we should make this a bit more interesting. The principal pressed a button on his desk. 0-pointer released in Sector F. Let's see how Midoriya handles this. Testing Site F. Thank you for the assistance. The boy with glasses shouted while bowing sharply to Izuku. It was no problem, really. I barely did anything. The greenette sheepishly smiled at the dramatic display. In Izuku's mind, he truly believed he did not do nearly enough to receive such a dignified response. All he merely did was help redirect the other teen's momentum so that he wouldn't fall into the awaiting ambush of robots. With his fellow examinee out of harm's way and the robots revealing themselves, Izuku allowed the glasses wearer to dispatch the machines. The jet engines that were embedded in his legs caught the greenet's attention immediately. It got Izuku curious about which one of the two was the fastest. I disagree vehemently. If not for you, I would have fallen to that ambush. The blue-haired teen continued. I am in your debt. No, that's okay. Izuku waved his hands. No debts, no favors, I simply helped because it was the right thing to do. The teen explained with a bright smile. Truly the mark of a great hero in the making. The boy muttered. He looked at Izuku as though he were All Might himself. I must learn from your example and become better if I am to achieve the status of a hero. Yeah, whatever you saw. Rumble. Like a crack of lighting, Izuku's head shot into the direction of the loud sound, his green eyes narrowing instantly. Truthfully, Izuku could feel something was off even before his ear even registered the noise. He could feel the ground beneath him had begun to shake, lightly at first, then becoming a deep shake. The ground moved with such intensity that the two teens nearly lost their balance. Spreading his wings, Izuku hovered in the air, staring down the street where the source of the vibrations came from. What was that? The blue-haired teen shouted in surprise. I don't know, but I think it's best if you get out of here. Izuku called back down. What about you? Was the panicked response. I'm going to make sure the others are safe too. The angel called back down before taking off in a show of speed that left the other boy speechless. Flying high into the air, Izuku could finally make out what was causing all the trembling. The zero-pointer in all its glory was currently trampling through the streets like a storm of destruction. Buildings collapsed under its mountainous size, sending rubble scattering across the arena with each inch it moved forward. The gigantic machine was heading towards his section of the city, though at a very slow pace. Not that its speed mattered, since its sheer size alone took up several city blocks easily. Quickly, Izuku began to race through the battlefield at breakneck speeds, his eyes working equally as fast and searching for any stragglers. From what Izuku could see, everyone was already in the process of getting as far away from the zero-pointer as possible. A look of relief washed over the teen's features as he saw everyone making their way to the other end of the city. Thank God, everyone's making it out all right. The angel let out a sigh. Tap tap, tap tap. Izuku's body jerked upright as his angelic senses picked up the vague sound of someone knocking on concrete. Following the sound, Izuku was drawn to a partially collapsed building, most of the rubble lining the street. However, what caught Izuku's eyes was not the destructive sight, but rather who was currently trapped underneath it. Abara was almost entirely covered by several thick pieces of debris, only leaving part of her upper body unscathed. The vine-haired girl was attempting to use her quirk in order to move the rubble from her body. Though the painful look on her face coupled with the lack of her freedom showcased how little progress she was making. The green-eyed teen immediately began to descend toward her, fully intending to help free her from her prison. However, he was halted in his tracks when a large, imposing shadow loomed over the street. Tremble, tremble. The zero-pointer was traveling straight toward the trapped girl with inhuman apathy. A look of pure horror appeared on Abara's face, her struggling becoming far more frantic and panicked. Yet, despite her efforts, the rubble trapping her refused to budge, leaving her an easy target. A glint could be seen coming from her eyes as tears began to softly flow. For a brief instant Izuku remained motionless in the air, watching the struggling girl with indecisiveness. He clearly didn't have enough time to clear the debris covering her body before they were both trampled by the zero-pointer. But Izuku did not believe, even with his power, that he could take down the machine before it reached Abara. What do I do? What do I do? The greenette frantically thought. Calm down. Focus. A voice that sounded eerily similar to Gabriel's sounded in Izuku's head. What? The teen stuttered back. Focus your mind, Izuku. You are an angel of God. Demonstrate your might. The voice continued unrelentingly. But I can't. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Izuku desperately shouted back at the voice in his head. You must be, if not for your sake then for hers. The voice bluntly stated before going silent. The angel considered the words with every ounce of mental strength he had. He knew that even with all the training, all that he had learned under Gabriel, he was still not confident in his abilities. A part of Izuku, a piece of him that manifested since his quirklessness diagnosis, told him that he couldn't be the hero he always dreamed to be. But another part, one that was growing in power, began to fill the Greenette's mind. Telling him he didn't need to be that hero that he wanted to be, he just needed to be Abara's. With a deep breath, Izuku began blocking out whatever thoughts tried to dissuade or persuade him. His mind focused like a laser beam on one single objective, destroying the zero-pointer and saving Abara. A familiar warmth began to fill his being. Unbeknownst to him, a comforting golden aura had surrounded his body like a second skin. Before Izuku could even think about what he was doing, he shot towards the gigantic robot, far faster than he ever had before. Like a gold and green bullet, the teen shot through the zero-pointer's head with ease. Metal and wires flew through the sky as he exited out of the back of its head, but Izuku was not done. Faster than any eye could track, he turned around and shot through the robot's abdomen, creating another substantial hole. Shatter! Izuku shouted before diving back towards the robot. He repeated the process so many times that it was impossible to keep count, becoming a rapid projectile that created trails of light in his wake. Izuku burst through the machine so many times that it was a wonder that it had not fallen to the ground with how many holes it had. Bits of wire, metal, and gears flew through the air as the cyclone of light that was Izuku continued to eviscerate the machine. He did not stop until the large glowing red eyes had dimmed to pitch blackness. With one final burst through the robot's chassis, the angel zipped down towards the awestruck vine-haired girl. Izuku lifted the rubble off her with minimal effort before picking her up in a bridal carry. Once the girl was firmly secured, he dashed back into the sky, leaving the zero-pointer to fall onto the street with a loud, destructive crash. And that's game, folks. Thanks for participating, we hope to see you back soon. Observation deck. Holy fuck. Snipe sputtered from his seat, his eyes wide with disbelief. Well, that was unexpected. Midnight found herself at a loss for words. I take back the generic comment from earlier. Smintos commented with a disbelieving shake of his head. That was insane. It was awesome. That's what it was. Present Mike cheered with a boisterous laugh. Impressive, All Might added with a semi-baffled expression. You know, if you don't want him a racer, I'll gladly take him into my class. Vlad King offered, looking impressed with the display. Nice try, kid is going into 1A without a doubt. Aizawa immediately denied. The man looked far more awake than ever since the exam started. What a wonderful display. Good thing too, because I tried shutting it off, but my button didn't work. Nezu clapped his paws together in delight. You're jokin', right boss? The cowboy hero hesitantly asked. The principal merely smiled in response. Testing Site F. With Abara now out of harm's way, Izuku could feel the warm sensation dissipating from his body. He let out a deep breath, more so to calm his racing heart than out of fatigue. With his wings gently flapping, he began to slowly descend to the ground. Oblivious to the look of absolute reverence being given by the vine-haired quirk user. He's so majestic. Abara thought, continuing to stare unashamedly. The girl snapped out of her thoughts, blinking dumbly as her dark green orbs met his bright green ones. I asked if you're hurt. Izuku repeated, still wearing a look of concern. I am well. Perhaps some light bruising, but nothing a little rest cannot heal. Abara answered in a soft voice. All right, but I'm still going to take you to Recovery Girl so she can have a look at you. The Greenette said before flying toward the entrance of the city at a moderate pace. He is like an angel. Abara knew it was his quirk, but she couldn't help but draw the comparison. The bright blue wings and spiky halo coupled with his caring personality made it hard for the Vine user to think otherwise. In no time the two reached the beginning of the city, with Izuku gently placing Abara down on her feet once he touched the ground. Almost immediately they were swarmed by UA staff checking them over with frenzied concern. Izuku thanked but kindly directed their attention towards Obara, telling them how she was trapped under a building. It seemed to have the desired effect as their attention swiftly moved over to the girl. With the attention now off him, Izuku offered Obara a parting smile and wave before he exited the testing site. Quietly, Izuku stepped back onto the awaiting bus, taking a seat towards the back to get some much-needed alone time. Oh my god, I just carried a girl in my arms. The angel could feel his face immediately light up with a bright red blush. I held a girl in my arms. The teen's face was the color of a cherry all the way until he was back home. Observation deck. Well, now I say we're in for a very eventful year this time around. Nezu smiled as the entrance exam came to a close. I'll say, so many energetic listeners. Hizashi agreed while stretching his aching back. You don't have a homeroom class, so you'll only get them in small quantities. Eraserhead droned tiredly. Me and Vlad are the ones who are going to be dealing with brats constantly. And I envy you for that, Shota, truly. The BDSM hero smirked. 3,000 yen on Midoriya being in first place. Snipe casually commented while adjusting his hat. Come on, make this interesting. I got 5,000 on Bakugo. Smintos challenged good-naturedly. Oh, you're on their partner. The two heroes shook hands in agreement. As much as I would love to join in, I have a protege that I need to get back to training. All Might chuckled at the interaction. The skinny man stood up before making his way towards the door. And for the record, I also would have put money on Midoriya. Isn't gambling not allowed here? Vlad King turned to look at his boss with a pointed look. Technically it's a wager, so therefore it's allowed. Nezu corrected politely. Punctilious as always. The blood hero rolled his eyes before falling after All Might. I'll see you all around. One by one each hero left the room, off to either return to their teaching or back to their hero duties. The only one who remained was Nezu, who began compiling the data of the examinees who participated in the exam. However, the animal hybrid was briefly distracted, finding himself rewatching footage of Izuku throughout the exam. If he could smile any wider, Nezu was sure his grin would reach around his entire head easily. My oh my, let's see how you do in this Hero Academia, Midoriya Izuku. To be continue. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.